Book 18 of Jerusalem Delivered by Torquato Tasso. Translated by Edward Fairfax. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Thomas Copeland.
The argument. The charms and spirits false therein which lie, Rinaldo chaseth from the forest old. The host of Egypt comes. Vafrine the spy entereth their camp, stout, crafty, wise, and bold. Sharp is the fight about the bulwarks high, and ports of Zion to assault the hold. Godfrey hath aid from heaven, by force the town is won, the pagans slain, walls beaten down. Arrived where Godfrey to embrace him stood, my sovereign lord, Rinaldo meekly said, to venge my wrongs against Gernando proud, my honor's care provoked my wrath unstayed. But that I you displeased, my chieftain good, my thoughts yet grieve, my heart is still dismayed, and here I come, pressed all exploits to try, to make me gracious in your gracious eye. To him that kneeled, folding his friendly arms about his neck, the Duke this answer gave: let pass such speeches sad of passed harms, remembrance is the life of grief, his grave forgetfulness. And for amends, in arms your wonted valor use, and courage brave. For you alone to happy end must bring the strong enchantments of the charmed spring. That aged wood whence heretofore we got to build our scaling engines timber fit, is now the fearful seat, but how none wot, where ugly fiends and damned spirits sit. To cut one twist thereof adventureth not the boldest knight we have, nor without it this wall can battered be. Where others doubt, there venture thou, and show thy courage stout. Thus said he, and the knight in speeches few proffered his service to attempt the thing. To hard assays his courage willing flew. To him praise was no spur, words were no sting. Of his dear friends then he embraced the crew to welcome him which came. For in a ring about him Guelpho, Tancred, and the rest stood, of the camp the greatest, chief, and best. When with the prince these lords had iterate their welcomes oft, and oft their dear embrace, toward the rest of lesser worth and state he turned, and them received with gentle grace. The merry soldiers about him shout and prate, with cries as joyful and as cheerful face, as if in triumph's chariot bright as sun he had returned, Afric or Asia won. Thus marched to his tent the champion good, and there sat down with all his friends around. Now of the war he asked, now of the wood, and answered each demand they list propound. But when they left him to his ease, up stood the hermit,
And, fit time to speak once found,
my lord, he said, your travels wondrous are, far have you strayed, erred, wandered far. Much are you bound to God above, who brought you safe from false Armida's charmed hold, and thee a straying sheep, whom once he bought, hath now again reduced to his fold. And gainst his heathen foes, these men of naught, hath chosen thee in place next Godfrey bold. Yet mayst thou not, polluted thus with sin,
in his high service
war or fight begin. The world, the flesh, and their infections vile, pollute thy thoughts impure, thy spirit stain. Not Po, not Ganges, not seven-mouthed Nile, not the wide seas can wash thee clean again. Only to purge all faults which thee defile, his blood hath power, who for thy sins was slain. His help therefore invoke, to him bewray thy secret faults, mourn, weep, complain, and pray. This said, the knight first, with the which unchaste his idle loves and follies vain, lamented. Then kneeling low, with heavy looks downcast, his other sins confessed, and all repented, and meekly pardon craved for first and last. The hermit with his zeal was well contented, and said, on yonder hill next morn go pray, that turns his forehead gainst the morning ray. That done, march to the wood, whence each one brings such news of furies, goblins, fiends, and sprites, that giants, monsters, and all dreadful things thou shalt subdue, which that dark grove unites. Let no strange voice that mourns or sweetly sings, nor beauty, whose glad smile frail hearts delights, within thy breast make ruth or pity rise, but their false looks and prayers false despise. Thus he advised him, and the hardy knight prepared him gladly to this enterprise. Thoughtful he passed the day, and sad the night, and ere the silver morn began to rise, his arms he took, and in a coat him dight of color strange, cut in the warlike guise, and on his way sole silent forth he went alone, and left his friends, and left his tent. It was the time when gainst the breaking day rebellious night yet strove, and still repined, for in the east appeared the morning gray, and yet some lamps in Jove's high palace shined, when to Mount Olivet he took his way, and saw, as round about his eyes he twined, night's shadows hence, from thence the morning's shine, this bright, that dark, that earthly, this divine. Thus to himself he thought, how many bright and splendid lamps shine in heaven's temple high. Day hath his golden sun, her moon the night, her fixed and wandering stars the azure sky, so framed all by their Creator's might, that still they live and shine, and ne'er shall die, till in a moment with the last day's brand they burn, and with them burn sea, air, and land. Thus as he mused, to the top he went, and there kneeled down with reverence and fear. His eyes upon heaven's eastern face he bent, his thoughts above all heavens uplifted were. The sins and errors which I now repent of mine unbridled youth, O Father dear, remember not, but let thy mercy fall, and purge my faults and mine offences all. Thus prayed he. With purple wings up flew in golden weed the morning's lusty queen, begilding with the radiant beams she threw his helm, his harness, and the mountain green. Upon his breast and forehead gently blew the air, that balm and nardus breathed unseen, and o'er his head, let down from clearest skies, a cloud of pure and precious dew there flies. The heavenly dew was on his garment spread, to which compared his clothes pale ashes seem, and sprinkled so that all that paleness fled, and thence of purest white bright rays outstream. So cheered are the flowers late withered, with the sweet comfort of the morning beam, and so returned to youth the serpent old adorns herself in new and native gold. The lovely whiteness of his changed weed the prince perceived well and long admired. Toward the forest marched he on with speed, resolved, as such adventures great required. Thither he came, whence shrinking back for dread of that strange desert sight the first retired. But not to him fearful or loathsome made that forest was, but sweet with pleasant shade. Forward he passed, and in the grove before he heard a sound that strange, sweet, pleasing was. There rolled a crystal brook with gentle roar, there sighed the winds as through the leaves they pass, there did the nightingale her wrongs deplore, there sung the swan, and singing died alas. There lute, harp, cittern, human voice he heard, and all these sounds one sound right well declared. A dreadful thunderclap at last he heard, the aged trees and plants well nigh that rent, yet heard the nymphs and sirens afterward, birds, winds, and waters sing with sweet consent. Whereat amazed he stayed, and well prepared for his defence, heedful and slow forth went. Nor in his way his passage aught withstood, except a quiet, still, transparent flood. On the green banks, which that fair stream inbound, flowers and odors sweetly smiled and smelled, which reaching out his stretched arms around, all the large desert in his bosom held, and through the grove one channel passage found, that in the wood, in that the forest dwelled. Trees clad the streams, streams green those trees aye made, and so exchanged their moisture and their shade. The knight some way sought out the flood to pass, and as he sought, a wondrous bridge appeared, a bridge of gold, a huge and weighty mass, on arches great of that rich metal reared. When through that golden way he entered was, down fell the bridge, swelled the stream, and wared the work away, nor sign left where it stood, and of a river calm became a flood. He turned amazed to see it troubled so, like sudden brooks increased with molten snow. The billows fierce that tossed to and fro, the whirlpools sucked down to their bosoms low. But on he went to search for wonders mo, through the thick trees there high and broad which grow. And in that forest huge and desert wide, the more he sought, more wonders still he spied. Whereso he stepped, it seemed the joyful ground renewed the verdure of her flowery weed. A fountain here, a wellspring there he found. Here bud the roses, there the lilies spread. The aged wood o'er and about him round flourished with blossoms new, new leaves, new seed. And on the boughs and branches of those treen the bark was softened, and renewed the green. The manna on each leaf did pearled lie, the honey stilled from the tender rind. Again he heard that wondrous harmony of songs and sweet complaints of lovers kind. The human voices sung a treble high, to which respond the birds, the streams, the wind. But yet unseen those nymphs, those singers were, unseen the lutes, harps, viols which they bear. He looked, he listened, yet his thoughts denied to think that true which he both heard and see. A myrtle in an ample plain he spied, and thither by a beaten path went he. The myrtle spread her mighty branches wide, higher than pine or palm or cypress tree, and far above all other plants was seen that forest's lady and that desert's queen. Upon the tree his eyes Rinaldo bent, and there a marvel great and strange began. An aged oak beside him cleft and rent, and from his fertile hollow womb forth ran, clad in rare weeds and strange habiliment, a nymph, for age able to go to man. 100 plants beside, even in his sight, childed 100 nymphs, so great, so dight. Such as on stages play, such as we see the dryads painted, whom wild satyrs love, whose arms half naked, locks untrussed be, with buskins laced on their legs above, and silken robes tucked short above their knee. Such seemed the sylvan daughters of this grove, save that instead of shafts and boughs of tree, she bore a lute, a harp, or cittern she. And wantonly they cast them in a ring, and sung and danced to move his weaker sense. Rinaldo round about environing, as centers are with their circumference. The tree they compassed eke, and gan to sing, that woods and streams admired their excellence. Welcome, dear lord, welcome to this sweet grove, welcome our lady's hope, welcome her love. Thou comest to cure our princess, faint and sick for love of thee, faint, sick, distressed. Late black, late dreadful was this forest thick, fit dwelling for sad folk with grief oppressed. See with thy coming how the branches quick revived are, and in new blossoms dressed. This was their song, and after from it went first a sweet sound, and then the myrtle rent. If antique times admired Silenus old, that oft appeared set on his lazy ass, how would they wonder if they had behold such sights as from the myrtle high did pass. Thence came a lady fair with locks of gold, that like in shape, in face, in beauty was to sweet Armide. Rinaldo thinks he spies her gestures, smiles, and glances of her eyes. On him a sad and smiling look she cast, which 20 passions strange at once bewrays. And art thou come, quoth she, returned at last to her from whom but late thou ranst thy ways? Comest thou to comfort me for sorrows past, to ease my widowed nights and careful days? Or comest thou to work me grief and harm? Why nilt thou speak? Why not thy face disarm? Comest thou a friend or foe? I did not frame that golden bridge to entertain my foe. nor opened flowers and fountains as you came to welcome him with joy that brings me woe. Put off thy helm, rejoice me with the flame of thy bright eyes, whence first my fires did grow. Kiss me, embrace me, if you further venture, love keeps the gate, the fort is eath to enter. Thus as she woos, she rolls her rueful eyes with piteous look, and changeth oft her cheer. An hundred sighs from her false heart upflies, she sobs, she mourns, it is great ruth to hear. The hardest breast sweet pity mollifies, what stony heart resists a woman's tear? But yet the knight, wise, wary, not unkind, drew forth his sword, and from her careless twined. Toward the tree he marched, she thither start, before him stepped, embraced the plant, and cried, "Ah, never do me such a spiteful part, to cut my tree, this forest's joy and pride. Put up thy sword, else pierce therewith the heart of thy forsaken and despised Armide. For through this breast and through this heart unkind, to this fair tree thy sword shall passage find." He lift his brand, nor cared, though oft she prayed, and she her form to other shape did change. Such monsters huge, when men in dreams are laid, oft in their idle fancies roam and range. Her body swelled, her face obscure was made, vanished her garments rich and vestures strange. A giantess before him high she stands, like Briareus armed with 100 hands. With 50 swords and 50 targets bright she threatened death. She roared, cried, and fought. Each other nymph, in armor likewise dight, a Cyclops great became. He feared them not, but on the myrtles smote with all his might, that groaned like living souls to death nigh brought. The sky seemed Pluto's court, the air seemed hell, therein such monsters roar, such spirits yell. Lightened the heaven above, the earth below roared aloud, that thundered and this shook. Blustered the tempest strong, the whirlwinds blow, the bitter storm drove hailstones in his look. But yet his arm grew neither weak nor slow, nor of that fury heed or care he took, till low to earth the wounded tree down bended. Then fled the spirits all, the charms all ended. The heavens grew clear, the air waxed calm and still. The wood returned to its wonted state, of witchcrafts free, quite void of spirits ill, of horror full, but horror there innate. He further proved, if aught withstood his will, to cut those trees, as did the charms of late, and finding naught to stop him, smiled and said, "O shadows vain, O fools of shades afraid." From thence home to the campward turned the knight. The hermit cried, upstarting from his seat, "Now of the wood the charms have lost their might, the sprites are conquered, ended is the feat. See where he comes." In glistering white all dight appeared the man, bold, stately, high, and great. His eagle's silver wings to shine begun, with wondrous splendor gainst the golden sun. The camp received him with a joyful cry, a cry the dales and hills about that filled. Then Godfrey welcomed him with honors high, his glory quenched, all spite, all envy killed. "To yonder dreadful grove," quoth he, "went I, and from the fearful wood, as me you willed, have driven the sprites away. Thither let be your people sent, the way is safe and free." Sent were the workmen thither, thence they brought timber enough, by good advice select. And though by skillless builders framed and wrought, their engines rude and rams were late erect, yet now the forts and towers from whence they fought were framed by a cunning architect, William, of all the Genoas lord and guide, which late ruled all the seas from side to side, but forced to retire from it at last, the pagan fleet the sea's moist empire won. His men with all their stuff and store in haste home to the camp with their commander run. In skill, in wit, in cunning, him surpassed, yet never engineer beneath the sun. Of carpenters 100 large he brought, that what their lord devised made and wrought. This man began with wondrous art to make not rams not mighty brakes, not slings alone, wherewith the firm and solid walls to shake, to cast a dart, or throw a shaft or stone, but framed of pines and firs, did undertake to build a fortress huge, to which was none yet ever like, whereof he clothed the sides against the balls of fire with raw bulls' hides. In mortices and sockets framed just, the beams, the studs, and puncheons joined he fast. To beat the city's wall, beneath forth thrust a ram with horned front, about her waist a bridge the engine from her side out thrust, which on the wall when need required she cast, and from her top a turret small upstood, strong, surely armed, and builded of like wood. Set on 100 wheels, the rolling mass on the smooth lands went nimbly up and down. Though full of arms and armed men it was, yet with small pains it ran as it had flown. Wondered the camp so quick to see it pass, they praised the workmen and their skill unknown. And on that day 2 towers they builded more, like that which sweet Clorinda burnt before. Yet wholly were not from the Saracens their works concealed and their labors hid. Upon that wall which next the camp confines, they placed spies, who marked all they did. They saw the ashes wild and squared pines, out of the tents trailed from the grove they slid, and engines huge they saw, yet could not tell how they were built, their forms they saw not well. Their engines eke they reared, and with great art repaired each bulwark, turret, port, and tower, and fortified the plain and easy part, to bide the storm of every warlike stour, till, as they thought, no sleight or force of mart to undermine or scale the same had power. And false Ismeno gan new balls prepare of wicked fire, wild, wondrous, strange, and rare. He mingled brimstone with bitumen fell, fetched from that lake where Sodom erst did sink, and from that flood which 9 times compassed hell, some of the liquor hot he brought, I think, wherewith the quenchless fire he tempered well, to make it smoke and flame and deadly stink. And for his wood cut down, the aged sire would thus revengement take with flame and fire. While thus the camp and thus the town were bent, these to assault, these to defend the wall, a speedy dove through the clear welkin went, straight o'er the tents, seen by the soldiers all. With nimble fans the yielding air she rent, nor seemed it that she would alight or fall, till she arrived near that besieged town. Then from the clouds at last she stooped down. But lo, from whence I note, a falcon came, armed with crooked bill and talons long, that twixt the camp and city crossed her game, that durst not bide her foe's encounter strong, but right upon the royal tent down came, and there the lords and princes great among. When the sharp hawk nigh touched her tender head, in Godfrey's lap she fell, with fear half dead. The Duke received her, saved her, and spied, as he beheld the bird, a wondrous thing. About her neck a letter close was tied by a small thread, and thrust under her wing. He loosed forth the writ, and spread it wide, and read the intent thereof. To Judah's king, thus said the schedule, honors high increase, the Egyptian chieftain wisheth health and peace. Fear not, renowned prince, resist, endure till the 3rd day, or till the 4th at most. I come, and your deliverance will procure, and kill your coward foes and all their host. This secret in that brief was closed up sure, writ in strange language, to the winged post given to transport. For in their warlike need the East such message used oft with good speed. The Duke let go the captive dove at large, and she that had his counsel close betrayed, traitress to her great lord, touched not the marge of Salem's town, but fled far thence afraid. The Duke before all those which had or charge or office high the letter read, and said, see how the goodness of the Lord foreshows the secret purpose of our crafty foes. No longer then let us protract the time, but scale the bulwark of this fortress high. Through sweat and labor gainst those rocks sublime let us ascend, which to the southward lie. Hard will it be that way in arms to climb, but yet the place and passage both know I. And that high wall by sight strong on that part is least defenced by arms, by work and art. Thou, Raymond, on this side with all thy might assault the wall, and by those crags ascend. My squadrons with mine engines huge shall fight, and gainst the northern gate my puissance bend. That so our foes, beguiled with the sight, our greatest force and power shall there attend, while my great tower from thence shall nimbly slide, and batter down some worse defended side. Camillo, thou not far from me shalt rear another tower, close to the walls abroad. This spoken, Raymond old that sat him near, and while he talked, great things tossed in his thought, said, To Godfredo's counsel given us here, naught can be added, from it taken naught. Yet this I further wish, that some were sent to spy their camp, their secret and intent, that may their number and their squadrons brave describe, and through their tents disguised mask. Quoth Tancred, Lo, a subtle squire I have, a person fit to undertake this task, a man quick, ready, bold, sly to deceive, to answer wise, and well advised to ask, well languaged, and that with time and place can change his look, his voice, his gait, his grace. Sent for he came, and when his lord him told what Godfrey's pleasure was, and what his own, he smiled and said, forthwith he gladly would. I go, quoth he, careless what chance be thrown, and where encamped be these pagans bold, will walk in every tent, a spy unknown, their camp even at noonday I enter shall, and number all their horse and footmen all. How great, how strong, how armed this army is, and what their guide intends I will declare. To me the secrets of that heart of his, and hidden thoughts shall open lie and bare. Thus Vafrine spoke, nor longer stayed on this, but for a mantle changed the coat he wear. Naked was his neck, and bout his forehead bold, of linen white full 20 yards he rolled. His weapons were a Syrian bow and quiver, his gestures barbarous like the Turkish train. Wondered all they that heard his tongue deliver of every land the language true and plain. In Tyre a born Phoenician, by the river of Nile a knight bred in the Egyptian main, both people would have thought him. Forth he rides on a swift steed, o'er hills and dales that glides. But ere the third day came, the French forth sent their pioneers to even the rougher ways, and ready made each warlike instrument, nor aught their labor interrupts or stays. The nights in busy toil they likewise spent, and with long evenings lengthened forth short days, till naught was left the hosts that hinder might to use their utmost power and strength in fight. That day, which of the salt the day forerun, the godly Duke in prayer spent well nigh, and all the rest, because they had misdone, the sacrament receive, and mercy cry. Then oft the Duke his engines great begun to show, where least he would their strength apply. His foes rejoiced, deluded in that sort, to see him bent against their surest port. But after, aided by the friendly knight, his greatest engine to that side he brought, where plainest seemed the wall, where with their might the flankers least could hurt them as they fought. And to the southern mountains' greatest height to raise his turret old Raimondo sought. And thou, Camillo, on that part hadst thine, where from the north the walls did westward twine. But when amid the eastern heaven appeared the rising morning, bright as shining glass, the troubled pagans saw, and seeing feared, how the great tower stood not where late it was, and here and there tofore unseen was reared, of timber strong, a huge and fearful mass. And numberless with beams, with ropes and strings, they view the iron rams, the brakes and slings. The Syrian people now were no whit slow their best defences to that side to bear, where Godfrey did his greatest engine show, from thence where late in vain they placed were. But he who at his back right well did know the host of Egypt to be approaching near, to him called Guelpho and the Roberts twain, and said, On horseback look you still remain, and have regard, while all our people strive to scale this wall, where weak it seems and thin, lest unawares some sudden host arrive, and at our backs unlooked for war begin. This said, 3 fierce assaults at once they give, the hardy soldiers all would die or win. And on 3 parts resistance makes the king, and rage gainst strength, despair gainst hope doth bring. Himself upon his limbs with feeble eild that shook, unwieldy with their proper weight, his armor laid, and long unused shield, and marched gainst Raymond to the mountain's height. Great Soliman gainst Godfrey took the field, for next Camillo stood Argantes straight, where Tancred strong he found. So fortune will that this good prince his wonted foe shall kill. The archers shot their arrows sharp and keen, dipped in the bitter juice of poison strong. The shady face of heaven was scantly seen, hid with the clouds of shafts and quarries long. Yet weapons sharp with greater fury been cast from the towers the pagan troops among. For thence flew stones and clifts of marble rocks, trees shod with iron, timber, logs, and blocks. A thunderbolt seemed every stone. It brake his limbs and armors so on whom it light, that life and soul it did not only take, but all his shape and face disfigured quite. The lances stayed not in the wounds they make, but through the gored body took their flight. From side to side, through flesh, through skin and rind they flew, and flying left sad death behind. But yet not all this force and fury drove the pagan people to forsake the wall, but to revenge these deadly blows they strove, with darts that fly, with stones and trees that fall. For need, so cowards oft courageous prove, for liberty they fight, for life and all, and oft with arrows, shafts, and stones that fly, give bitter answer to a sharp reply. This while the fierce assailants never cease, but sternly still maintain a threefold charge, and gainst the clouds of shafts draw nigh at ease, under a pentise made of many a targe. The armed towers close to the bulwarks prease, and strive to grapple with the battled marge, and launch their bridges out. Meanwhile below, with iron fronts, the rams the walls down throw. Yet still Rinaldo unresolved went, and far unworthy him this service thought. If mongst the common sort his pains he spent, renown so got the prince esteemed not. His angry looks on every side he bent, and where most harm, most danger was, he sought. And where the wall high, strong, and surest was, that part would he assault, and that way pass. And turning to the worthies him behind, all hardy knights whom Dudon late did guide, "Oh shame," quoth he, "this wall no war doth find, when battered is elsewhere each part, each side. All pain is safety to a valiant mind, each way is eath to him that dares abide. Come, let us scale this wall, though strong and high, and with your shields keep off the darts that fly." With him united all, while thus he spake, their targets hard above their heads they threw, which joined in one an iron pentise make, that from the dreadful storm preserved the crew. Defended thus, their speedy course they take, and to the wall without resistance drew. For that strong pentacle protected well the knights from all that flew and all that fell. Against the fort Rinaldo gan uprear a ladder huge, 100 steps of height, and on his arm the same did easily bear and move, as winds do reeds or rushes light. Sometimes a tree, a rock, a dart, or spear fell from above, yet forward clomb the knight, and upward fearless pressed, careless still, though Mount Olympus fell, or Ossa hill. A mount of ruins and of shafts, a wood upon his shoulders and his shield he bore. One hand the ladder held whereon he stood, the other bare his targe, his face before. His hardy troop, by his example good provoked, with him the place assaulted sore, and ladders long against the wall they clap, unlike in courage yet, unlike in hap. One died, another fell, he forward went, and these he comforts and he threateneth those. Now with his hand outstretched the battlement well nigh he reached, when all his armed foes ran thither, and their force and fury bent to throw him headlong down, yet up he goes. A wondrous thing, one knight whole armed bands, alone and hanging in the air, withstands and forceth his great strength so far, that like a palm whereon huge weight doth rest, his forces so resisted stronger are, his virtues higher rise the more oppressed, till all that would his entrance bold debar, he backward drove, upleaped, and possessed the wall, and safe and easy with his blade to all that after came the passage made. There killing such as durst and did withstand, to noble Eustace, that was like to fall, he reached forth his friendly conquering hand, and next himself helped him to mount the wall. This while Godfredo and his people fanned their lives to greater harms and dangers thrall, for there not man with man, nor knight with knight contend, but engines there with engines fight. For in that place the Paynims reared a post, which late had served some gallant ship for mast, and over it another beam they crossed, pointed with iron sharp, to it made fast with ropes, which as men would, the dormant tossed now out, now in, now back, now forward cast. In his swift pulleys oft the men withdrew the tree, and oft the riding balk forththrew. The mighty beam redoubled oft his blows, and with such force the engine smote and hit, that her broadside the tower wide open throws. Her joints were broke, her rafters cleft and split, but yet, gainst every hap whence mischief grows prepared, the piece, gainst such extremes made fit, launched forth two scythes, sharp cutting, long and broad, and cut the ropes whereon the engine rode. As an old rock which age or stormy wind tears from some craggy hill or mountain steep, doth break, doth bruise, and into dust doth grind wood, houses, hamlets, herds, and folds of sheep, so fell the beam, and down with it all kind of arms, of weapons, and of men did sweep, wherewith the towers once or twice did shake, trembled the walls, the hills and mountains quake. Victorious Godfrey boldly forward came, and had great hope even then the place to win, but lo, a fire with stench, with smoke and flame withstood his passage, stopped his entrance in. Such burning Aetna yet could never frame, when from her entrails hot her fires begin, nor yet in summer on the Indian plain such vapors warm from scorching air down rain. Here balls of wildfire, there fly burning spears, this flame was black, that blue, this red as blood, stench well nigh choketh them, noise deafs their ears, smoke blinds their eyes, fire kindleth on the wood, nor those raw hides, which for defence it wears, could save the tower, in such distress it stood, for now they wrinkle, now it sweats and fries, now burns, unless some help come down from skies. The hardy Duke before his folk abides, nor changed he color, countenance, or place, but comforts those that from the scalded hides with water strove the approaching flames to chase. In these extremes the prince and those he guides half roasted stood before fierce Vulcan's face, when lo, a sudden and unlooked for blast the flames against the kindlers backward cast. The winds drove back the fire where heaped lie the pagans' weapons, where their engines were, which kindling quickly in that substance dry, burnt all their store and all their warlike gear. O glorious captain, whom the Lord from high defends, whom God preserves and holds so dear, for thee heaven fights, to thee the winds from far, called with thy trumpet's blast, obedient are. But wicked Ismen to his harm that saw how the fierce blast drove back the fire and flame, by art would nature change, and thence withdraw those noisome winds,
else calm and still the same.
Twixt two false wizards, without fear or awe, upon the walls in open sight he came, black, grisly, loathsome, grim, and ugly faced, like Pluto old, betwixt two furies placed. And now the wretch those dreadful words begun, which tremble make deep hell and all her flock. Now troubled is the air, the golden sun his fearful beams in clouds did close and lock, when from the tower, which Ismen could not shun, out flew a mighty stone, late half a rock, which light so just upon the wizards three, that driven to dust their bones and bodies be. To less than naught their members old were torn, and shivered were their heads to pieces small as are the bruised grains of corn, when from the mill dissolved to meal they fall. Their damned souls to deepest hell downborne, far from the joy and light celestial, the furies plunged in the infernal lake, O mankind, at their ends ensample take. This while the engine, which the tempest cold had saved from burning with his friendly blast, approached had so near the battered hold, that on the walls her bridge at ease she cast. But Solyman ran thither fierce and bold, to cut the plank whereon the Christians passed, and had performed his will, save that, upreared high in the skies, a turret new appeared. Far in the air upclomb the fortress tall, higher than house, than steeple, church, or tower. The pagans trembled to behold the wall and city subject to her shot and power. Yet kept the Turk his stand, though on him fall of stones and darts a sharp and deadly shower. And still to cut the bridge he hopes and strives, and those that fear with cheerful speech revives. The angel Michael, to all the rest unseen, appeared before Godfredo's eyes, in pure and heavenly armor richly dressed, brighter than Titan's rays in clearest skies. Godfrey, quoth he, this is the moment blessed to free this town that long in bondage lies. See, see what legions in thine aid I bring, for heaven assists thee, and heaven's glorious King. Lift up thine eyes, and in the air behold the sacred armies, how they mustered be. That cloud of flesh, in which from times of old all mankind wrapped is, I take from thee, and from thy senses their thick mist unfold, that face to face thou mayst these spirits see, and for a little space right well sustain their glorious light, and view those angels plain. Behold the souls of every lord and knight that late bore arms and died for Christ's dear sake. How on thy side against this town they fight, and of thy joy and conquest will partake. There where the dust and smoke blind all men's sight, where stones and ruin such a heap do make, there Hugo fights, in thickest cloud embarred, and undermines that bulwark's groundwork hard. See Dudon yonder, who with sword and fire assails, and helps to scale the northern port, that with bold courage doth thy folk inspire, and rears their ladders gainst the salted fort. He that high on the mount in grave attire is clad, and crowned stands in kingly sort, is Bishop Ademare, a blessed spirit, blessed for his faith, crowned for his death and merit. But higher lift thy happy eyes, and view where all the sacred hosts of heaven appear. He looked, and saw where winged armies flew, innumerable, pure, divine, and clear. A battle round of squadrons 3 they shew, and all by threes those squadrons ranged were, which spreading wide in rings still wider go, moved with a stone, calm water circleth so. With that he winked, and vanished was and gone that wondrous vision when he looked again. His worthies fighting viewed he one by one, and on each side saw signs of conquest plain. For with Rinaldo gainst his yielding foe his knights were entered, and the pagans slain. This scene the Duke no longer stay could brook, but from the bearer bold his ensign took, and on the bridge he stepped, but there was stayed by Solyman, who entrance all denied. That narrow tree to virtue great was made the field, as in few blows right soon was tried. Here will I give my life for Zion's aid, here will I end my days, the Soldan cried. Behind me cut or break this bridge, that I may kill 1,000 Christians first, then die. But thither fierce Rinaldo threatening went, and at his sight fled all the Soldan's train. What shall I do? If here my life be spent, I spend and spill, quoth he, my blood in vain. With that his steps from Godfrey back he bent, and to him let the passage free remain, who threatening followed as the Soldan fled, and on the walls the purple cross to spread. About his head he tossed, he turned, he cast that glorious ensign with 1,000 twines. Thereon the wind breathes with his sweetest blast, thereon with golden rays glad Phoebus shines. Earth laughs for joy, the streams forbear their haste, floods clap their hands, on mountains dance the pines, and Sion's towers and sacred temples smile for their deliverance from that bondage vile. And now the armies reared the happy cry of victory, glad, joyful, loud and shrill. The hills resound, the echo shouteth high, and Tancred bold, that fights and combats still with proud Argantes, brought his tower so nigh, that on the wall, against the boaster's will, in his despite, his bridge he also laid, and won the place, and there the cross displayed. But on the southern hill, where Raymond fought against the townsmen and their aged king, his hardy Gascoigns gained small or naught, their engine to the walls they could not bring, for thither all his strength the prince had brought, for life and safety sternly combating. And for the wall was feeblest on that coast, there were his soldiers best, and engines most. Besides, the tower upon that quarter found unsure, uneasy, and uneven the way, nor art could help, but that the rougher ground the rolling mass did often stop and stay. But now of victory the joyful sound the king and Raymond heard amid their fray, and by the shout they and their soldiers know the town was entered on the plain below. Which heard, Raymondo thus bespake this crew: "The town is won, my friends, and doth it yet resist? Are we kept out still by these few? Shall we no share in this high conquest get?" But from that part the king at last withdrew, he strove in vain their entrance there to let, and to a stronger place his folk he brought, where to sustain the assault a while he thought. The conquerors at once now entered all, the walls were won, the gates were opened wide. Now bruised, broken down, destroyed fall the ports and towers that battery durst abide. Rageth the sword, death murdereth great and small, and proud twixt woe and horror sad doth ride. Here runs the blood, in ponds there stands the gore, and drowns the knights in whom it lived before.
End of Book 18. Book 19 of Jerusalem Delivered by Torquato Tasso. Translated by Edward Fairfax. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Thomas Copeland.
The argument. Tancred in single combat kills his foe Argantes strong. The king and Soldan fly to David's tower, and save their persons so. Erminia well instructs Vafrine the spy, with him she rides away, and as they go finds where her lord for dead on earth doth lie. First she laments, then cures him. Godfrey hears Ormondo's treason, and what marks he bears. Now death or fear, or care to save their lives, from their forsaken walls the pagans chase. Yet neither force, nor fear, nor wisdom drives the constant knight Argantes from his place. Alone against 10,000 foes he strives, yet dreadless, doubtless, careless seemed his face. Nor death, nor danger, but disgrace he fears, and still unconquered, though o'erset, appears. But mongst the rest, upon his helmet gay, with his broadsword, Tancredi came and smote. The pagan knew the prince by his array, by his strong blows, his armor, and his coat. For once they fought, and when night stayed that fray, new time they chose to end their combat hot. But Tancred failed, wherefore the pagan knight cried, "Tancred, comest thou thus late to fight? Too late thou comest, and not alone, to war. But yet the fight I neither shun nor fear, although from knighthood true thou errest far, since like an engineer thou dost appear. That tower, that troop, thy shield and safety are, strange kind of arms in single fight to bear. Yet shalt thou not escape, O conqueror strong of ladies fair, sharp death to venge that wrong." Lord Tancred smiled with disdain and scorn, and answered thus: "To end our strife," quoth he, "behold at last I come, and my return, though late, perchance will be too soon for thee. For thou shalt wish, of hope and help forlorn, some sea or mountain placed twixt thee and me, And well shalt know before we end this fray, no fear or cowardice hath caused my stay. But come aside, thou by whose prowess dies the monsters, knights, and giants in all lands. The killer of weak women thee defies." This said, he turned to his fighting bands, and bids them all retire. "Forbear," he cries, "to strike this knight, on him let none lay hands, for mine he is, more than a common foe, by challenge new, and promise old also." "Descend," the fierce Circassian gan reply, "alone, or all this troop for succor take, to deserts waste, or place frequented high, for vantage none I will the fight forsake." Thus given and taken was the bold defy, and through the press agreed so they break. Their hatred made them one, and as they wend, each knight his foe did for despite defend. Great was his thirst of praise, great the desire that Tancred had the pagan's blood to spill, nor could that quench his wrath or calm his ire, if other hand his foe should foil or kill. He saved him with his shield, and cried, "Retire," to all he met, "and do this knight none ill." And thus defending against his friends, his foe, through thousand angry weapons safe they go. They left the city, and they left behind Godfredo's camp, and far beyond it passed, and came where into creeks and bosoms blind a winding hill his corners turned and cast. A valley small and shady dale they find amid the mountains steep, so laid and placed as if some theatre or closed place had been for men to fight or beasts to chase. There stayed the champions both, with rueful eyes Argantes gan the fortress won to view. Tancred his foe withouten shield espies, and far away his target therefore threw, and said, "Whereon doth thy sad heart devise? Think'st thou this hour must end thy life untrue? If this thou fear, and dost foresee thy fate, thy fear is vain, thy foresight comes too late. I think," quoth he, "on this distressed town, the aged queen of Judah's ancient land, now lost, now sacked, spoiled, and trodden down, whose fall in vain I strived to withstand. The small revenge for Sion's fort o'erthrown, that head can be cut off by my strong hand." This said, together with great heed they flew, for each his foe for bold and hardy knew. Tancred of body active was and light, quick, nimble, ready both of hand and foot, but higher by the head the pagan knight of limbs far greater was, of heart as stout. Tancred laid low and traversed in his fight, now to his ward retired, now struck out. Oft with his sword his foe's fierce blows he broke, and rather chose to ward than bear his stroke. But bold and bolt upright Argantes fought, unlike in gesture, like in skill and art. His sword outstretched before him far he brought, nor would his weapon touch, but pierce his heart. To catch his point Prince Tancred strove and sought, but at his breast or helm's unclosed part he threatened death, and would with stretched out brand his entrance close and fierce assaults withstand. With a tall ship so doth a galley fight, when the still winds stir not the unstable main, where this in nimbleness as that in might excels. That stands, this goes and comes again, and shifts from prow to poop with turnings light. Meanwhile the other doth unmoved remain, and on her nimble foe approaching nigh, her weighty engines tumbleth down from high. The Christian sought to enter on his foe, voiding his point, which at his breast was bent. Argantes at his face a thrust did throw, which while the prince awards and doth prevent, his ready hand the pagan turned so, that all defence his quickness far o'erwent, and pierced his side, which done he said and smiled, "The craftsman is in his own craft beguiled." Tancredi bit his lip for scorn and shame, nor longer stood on points of fence and skill, but to revenge so fierce and fast he came, as if his hand could not o'ertake his will, and at his visor aiming just, gan frame to his proud boast an answer sharp, but still Argantes broke the thrust, and at half sword, swift, hardy, bold, in stepped the Christian lord. with his left foot fast forward gan he stride, and with his left the pagan's right arm hent. With his right hand meanwhile the man's right side he cut, he wounded, mangled, tore and rent. To his victorious teacher Tancred cried, his conquered scholar hath this answer sent. Argantes chafed, struggled, turned and twined, yet could not so his captive arm unbind. His sword at last he let hang by the chain, and gripped his hardy foe in both his hands. In his strong arms Tancred caught him again, and thus each other held and wrapped in bands. With greater might Alcides did not strain the giant Antaeus on the Libyan sands. On holdfast knots their brawny arms they cast, and whom he hateth most each held embraced. Such was their wrestling, such their shocks and throws, that down at once they tumbled both to ground. Argantes, were it hap or skill who knows, his better hand loose and in freedom found, but the good prince his hand more fit for blows, with his huge weight the pagan underbound. But he, his disadvantage great that knew, let go his hold, and on his feet up flew. Far slower rose the unwieldy Saracine, and caught a rap ere he was reared upright. But as against the blustering winds a pine now bends his top, now lifts his head on height, his courage so, when it gan most decline, the man reinforced and advanced his might, and with fierce change of blows renewed the fray, where rage for skill, horror for art bore sway. The purple drops from Tancred's sides down railed, but from the pagan ran whole streams of blood, wherewith his force grew weak, his courage quailed,
as fires die which fuel want or food.
Tancred, that saw his feeble arm now failed to strike his blows, that scant he stirred or stood, assuaged his anger and his wrath allayed, and stepping back thus gently spoke, and said, yield, hardy knight, and chance of war or me confess to have subdued thee in this fight. I will no trophy, triumph, spoil of thee, nor glory wish, nor seek a victor's right. More terrible than erst herewith grew he, and all awaked his fury, rage and might, and said, darest thou advantage speak or think, or move Argantes once to yield or shrink? Use thy vantage, thee and fortune both I scorn, and punish will thy foolish pride. As a hot brand flames most ere it forth goeth, and dying blazeth bright on every side, so he, when blood was lost, with anger wroth, revived his courage when his puissance died, and would his latest hour, which now drew nigh, illustrate with his end, and nobly die. He joined his left hand to her sister strong, and with them both let fall his weighty blade. Tancred, to ward his blow, his sword upflung, but that it smote aside, nor there it stayed, but from his shoulder to his side along it glanced, and many wounds at once it made. Yet Tancred feared not, for in his heart found coward dread no place, fear had no part. His fearful blow he doubled, but he spent his force in waste, and all his strength in vain, for Tancred from the blow against him bent, leaped aside, the stroke fell on the plain. With thine own weight o'erthrown to earth thou went, Argantes stout, nor couldst thyself sustain. Thyself thou threwest down, O happy man, upon whose fall none boast or triumph can. His gaping wounds the fall set open wide, the streams of blood about him made a lake. Helped with his left hand, on one knee he tried to rear himself, and new defence to make. The courteous prince stepped back, and yield thee cried. No hurt he proffered him, no blow he strake. Meanwhile by stealth the pagan false him gave a sudden wound, threatening with speeches brave. Herewith Tancredi furious grew, and said, villain, dost thou my mercy so despise? Therewith he thrust and thrust again his blade, and through his vental pierced his dazzled eyes. Argantes died, yet no complaint he made, but as he furious lived, he careless dies. Bold, proud, disdainful, fierce, and void of fear, his motions last looks, last speeches were. Tancred put up his sword, and praises glad gave to his God that saved him in this fight. But yet this bloody conquest feebled had so much the conqueror's force, his strength and might, that through the way he feared, which homeward led, he had not strength enough to walk upright. Yet as he could, his steps from thence he bent, and foot by foot a heavy pace forth went. His legs could bear him but a little stound, and more he hastes, more tired, less was his speed. On his right hand at last, laid on the ground, he leaned, his hand weak like a shaking reed, dazzled his eyes, the world on wheels ran round. Day wrapped her brightness up in sable weed. At length he swooned, and the victor knight naught differed from his conquered foe in sight. But while these lords their private fight pursue, made fierce and cruel through their secret hate, the victor's ire destroyed the faithless crew from street to street, and chased from gate to gate. But of the sacked town the image true who can describe, or paint the woeful state? Or with fit words this spectacle express? Who can, or tell the city's great distress? Blood, murder, death, each street, house, church defiled. There heaps of slain appear, there mountains high. There underneath unburied hills uppiled of bodies dead, the living buried lie. There the sad mother with her tender child doth tear her tresses loose, complain and fly. And there the spoiler by her amber hair draws to his lust the virgin chaste and fair. But through the way that to the west hill yode, whereon the old and stately temple stands, all soiled with gore and wet with lukewarm blood, Rinaldo ran and chased the pagan bands. Above their heads he heaved his curtlax good, life in his grace and death lay in his hands. Nor helm nor target strong his blows off bears, best armed there seemed he no arms that wears. For against his armed foes he only bends his force, and scorns the naked folk to wound. Them whom no courage arms, no arms defends, he chased with his looks and dreadful sound. Oh, who can tell how far his force extends? How these he scorns, threats those, lays them on ground? How with unequal harm, with equal fear fled all that well armed or naked were. Fast fled the people weak, and with the same a squadron strong is to the temple gone, which burnt and builded oft still keeps the name of the first founder, wise King Solomon. That prince this stately house did whilome frame of cedar trees, of gold and marble stone. Now not so rich, yet strong and sure it was, with turrets high, thick walls, and doors of brass. The night arrived where in warlike sort the men that ample church had fortified, and closed found each wicket, gate, and port, and on the top defences ready spied. He lift his frowning looks, and twice that fort from his high top down to the groundwork eyed, and entrance sought, and twice with his swift foot the mighty place he measured about. Like as a wolf about the closed fold rangeth by night his hoped prey to get, enraged with hunger and with malice old, which kind twixt him and harmless sheep hath set, so searched he high and low about that hold, where he might enter without stop or let. In the great court he stayed, his foes above attend the assault, and would their fortune prove. There lay by chance a posted tree thereby, kept for some needful use. Whate'er it were, the armed galleys, not so thick nor high, their tall and lofty masts at Genes uprear. This beam the knight against the gates made fly from his strong hands, all weights which lift and bear. Like a light lance the tree he shook and tossed, and bruised the gate, the threshold, and the post. No marble stone, no metal strong outbore the wondrous might of that redoubled blow. The brazen hinges from the wall it tore, it broke the locks, and laid the doors down low. No iron ram, no engine could do more, nor cannons great that thunderbolts forthrow. His people like a flowing stream in throng, and after them entered the victor strong. The woeful slaughter black and loathsome made that house, sometime the sacred house of God. O heavenly justice, if thou be delayed, on wretched sinners sharper falls thy rod. In them this place profaned which invade, thou kindled ire, and mercy all forbode, until with their heart's blood the pagans vile this temple washed, which they did late defile. But Soliman this while himself fast sped up to the fort, which David's tower is named, and with him all the soldiers left he led, and gainst each entrance new defences framed. The tyrant Aladine eke thither fled, to whom the Soldan thus far off exclaimed, "Come, come, renowned king, up to this rock, thyself within this fortress safe uplock, for well this fortress shall thee and thy crown defend, a while here may we safe remain." "Alas," quoth he, "alas, for this fair town, which cruel war beats down even with the plain. My life is done, mine empire trodden down, I reigned, I lived, but now nor live nor reign.
For now, alas, behold the fatal hour that ends our life and ends our kingly power."
"Where is your virtue? Where your wisdom grave and courage stout?" the angry Soldan said. "Let chance our kingdoms take, which erst she gave, yet in our hearts our kingly worth is laid. But come, and in this fort your person save, refresh your weary limbs and strength decayed." Thus counselled he, and did to safety bring within that fort the weak and aged king. His iron mace in both his hands he hent, and on his thigh his trusty sword he tied, and to the entrance fierce and fearless went, and kept the strait, and all the French defied. The blows were mortal which he gave or lent, for whom he hit he slew, else by his side laid low on earth, that all fled from the place where they beheld that great and dreadful mace. But old Raymondo with his hearty crew by chance came thither, to his great mishap. To that defended path the old man flew, and scorned his blows, and him that kept the gap. He struck his foe, his blow no blood forth drew, but on the front with that he caught a rap, which in a swoon low in the dust him laid, wide open, trembling, with his arms displayed. The pagans gathered heart at last, though fear their courage weak had put to flight but late, so that the conquerors repulsed were, and beaten back, else slain before the gate. The Soldan, mongst the dead beside him near, that saw Lord Raymond lie in such a state, cried to his men, "Within these bars," quoth he, "come draw this knight, and let him captive be." Forward they rushed to execute his word, but hard and dangerous that emprise they found, for none of Raymond's men forsook their lord, but to their guide's defence they flocked round. Thence fury fights, hence pity draws the sword, nor strive they for vile cause or on light ground. The life and freedom of that champion brave, those spoil, these would preserve, those kill, these save. But yet at last, if they had longer fought, the hardy Soldan would have won the field, for gainst his thundering mace availed naught, or helm of temper fine, or sevenfold shield. But from each side great succor now was brought to his weak foes, now fit to faint and yield. And both at once to aid and help the same, the sovereign Duke and young Rinaldo came. As when a shepherd raging round about, that sees a storm with wind, hail, thunder, rain, when gloomy clouds have day's bright eye put out, his tender flocks drives from the open plain to some thick grove or mountain's shady foot, where heaven's fierce wrath they may unhurt sustain, and with his hook, his whistle, and his cries, drives forth his fleecy charge, and with them flies. So fled the Soldan when he gan descry this tempest come from angry war forth cast. The armor clashed and lightened gainst the sky, and from each side swords, weapons, fire outbrast. He sent his folk up to the fortress high, to shun the furious storm, himself stayed last. Yet to the danger he gave place at length, for wit his courage, wisdom ruled his strength. But scant the night was safe, the gate within, scant closed were the doors, when having broke the bars, Rinaldo doth assault begin against the port, and on the wicket stroke his matchless might. His great desire to win, his oath and promise, doth his wrath provoke. For he had sworn, nor should his word be vain, to kill the man that had Prince Sweno slain. And now his armed hand that castle great would have assaulted, and had shortly won, nor safe pardie the Soldan there a seat had found, his fatal foe's sharp wrath to shun, had not Godfredo sounded the retreat. For now dark shades to shroud the earth begun, within the town the Duke would lodge that night, and with the morn renew the assault and fight. With cheerful look thus to his folk he said, High God hath holpen well his children dear, this work is done, the rest this night delayed doth little labor bring, less doubt, no fear. This tower, our foes' weak hope and latest aid, we conquer will when sun shall next appear. Meanwhile with love and tender ruth, go see and comfort those which hurt and wounded be. Go cure their wounds, which boldly ventured their lives, and spilt their bloods to get this hold. That fitteth more this host, for Christ forth led, than thirst of vengeance, or desire of gold. Too much, too much blood this day is shed, in some we too much haste to spoil behold. But I command no more you spoil and kill, and let a trumpet publish forth my will. This said, he went where Raymond panting lay, waked from the swoon wherein he late had been. Nor Solyman with countenance less gay bespake his troops, and kept his grief unseen. My friends, you are unconquered this day, in spite of fortune still our hope is green, for underneath great shows of harm and fear, our dangers small, our losses little were. Burnt are your houses, and your people slain, yet safe your town is, though your walls be gone, for in yourselves and in your sovereign consists your city, not in lime and stone. Your king is safe, and safe is all his train, in this strong fort defended from their foe. And on this empty conquest let them boast, till with this town again their lives be lost. And on their heads the loss at last will light, for with good fortune, proud and insolent, in spoil and murder spend they day and night, in riot, drinking, lust, and ravishment, and may amid their praise, with little fight, at ease be overthrown, killed, slain, and spent, if in this carelessness the Egyptian host upon them fall, which now draws near this coast. Meanwhile the highest buildings of this town we may shake down with stones about their ears, and with our darts and spears from engines thrown command that hill Christ's sepulchre that bears. Thus comforts he their hopes and hearts cast down, awakes their valors, and exiles their fears. But while these things hap thus, Vafrino goes unknown amid 10,000 armed foes. The sun nigh set had brought to end the day, when Vafrin went the pagan host to spy. He passed unknown a close and secret way, a traveller, false, cunning, crafty, sly. Past Ascalon he saw the morning gray step o'er the threshold of the eastern sky, and ere bright Titan half his course had run, that camp, that mighty host to show begun. Tents infinite and standards broad he spies, this red, that white, that blue, this purple was, and hears strange tongues and stranger harmonies of trumpets, clarions, and well-sounding brass. The elephant there brays, the camel cries, the horses neigh as to and fro they pass, which seen and heard, he said within his thought, hither all Asia is, all Afric brought. He viewed the camp a while, her site and seat, what ditch, what trench it had, what rampire strong. Nor close nor secret ways to work his feet he longer sought, nor hid him from the throng, but entered through the gates broad, royal, great, and oft he asked, and answered oft among, in questions wise, in answers short and sly. Bold was his look, eyes quick, front lifted high. On every side he pried here and there, and marked each way, each passage, and each tent. The knights he notes, their steeds and arms they bear, their names, their armor, and their government, and greater secrets hopes to learn, and hear their hidden purpose and their close intent. So long he walked and wandered, till he spied the way to approach the great pavilion's side. There as he looked, he saw the canvas rent, through which the voice found eath and open way from the close lodgings of the regal tent, and inmost closet where the captain lay. So that if Emireno spake, forth went the sound to them that listen what they say. There Vafrine watched, and those that saw him thought to mend the breach that there he stood and wrought. The captain great within bareheaded stood, his body armed and clad in purple weed. 2 pages bore his shield and helmet good. He, leaning on a bending lance, gave heed to a big man, whose looks were fierce and proud, with whom he parleyed of some haughty deed. Godfredo's name, as Vafrine watched, he heard, which made him give more heed, take more regard. Thus spake the chieftain to that surly sire: "Art thou so sure that Godfrey shall be slain?" "I am," quoth he, "and swear ne'er to retire, except he first be killed, to court again. I will prevent those that with me conspire, nor other guerdon ask I for my pain, but that I may hang up his harness brave at Caire, and under them these words engrave: These arms Ormondo took in noble fight from Godfrey proud, that spoiled all Asia's lands, and with them took his life. And here on height, in memory thereof, this trophy stands." The Duke replied: "Ne'er shall that deed, bold knight, pass unrewarded at our sovereign's hands. What thou demandest shall he gladly grant, nor gold nor guerdon shalt thou wish or want. Those counterfeited armors then prepare, because the day of fight reproacheth fast." "They ready are," quoth he. Then both forbear from further talk, these speeches were the last. Vafrine these great things heard, with grief and care remained astound, and in his thoughts oft cast what treason false this was, how feigned were those arms, but yet that doubt he could not clear. From thence he parted, and broad waking lay all that long night, nor slumbered once, nor slept. But when the camp by peep of springing day their banners spread, and knights on horseback leapt, with them he marched forth in meet array, and where they pitched lodged, and with them kept. And then from tent to tent he stalked about, to hear and see and learn this secret out. Searching about, on a rich throne he found Armida set, with dames and knights around. Sullen she sat and sighed, it seemed she scanned some weighty matters in her thoughts profound. Her rosy cheek leaned on her lily hand, her eyes, love's twinkling stars, she bent to ground. Weep she or no, he knows not, yet appears her humid eyes e'en great with child with tears. He saw before her set Adrastus grim, that seemed scant to live, move, or respire, so was he fixed on his mistress trim, so gazed he, and fed his fond desire. But Tisipherne beheld now her, now him, and quaked sometime for love, sometime for ire, and in his cheeks the color went and came, for there wrath's fire now burnt, now shone love's flame. Then from the garland fair of virgins bright, mongst whom he lay enclosed, rose Altamore, his hot desire he hid and kept from sight. His looks were ruled by Cupid's crafty lore, his left eye viewed her hand, her face, his right both watched her beauty's hid and secret store, and entrance found where her thin veil bewrayed the milken way between her breasts that laid. Her eyes Armida lift from earth at last, and cleared again her front and visage sad. Midst clouds of woe her looks which overcast, she lightened forth a smile, sweet, pleasant, glad. "My lord," quoth she, "your oath and promise past hath freed my heart of all the griefs it had, that now in hope of sweet revenge it lives. Such joy, such ease, desired vengeance gives." "Cheer up thy looks," answered the Indian king, "and for sweet beauty's sake appease thy woe. Cast at your feet, ere you expect the thing, I will present the head of thy strong foe. Else shall this hand his person captive bring, and cast in prison deep." He boasted so. His rival heard him well, yet answered not, but bit his lips, and grieved in secret thought. To Tisipherne the damsel turning right, "And what say you, my noble lord?" quoth she. He taunting said, "I that am slow to fight will follow far behind, the worth to see of this your terrible and puissant knight. In scornful words this bitter scoff gave he. Good reason, quoth the king, thou come behind, nor e'er compare thee with the Prince of Ind. Lord Tisipherne shook his head and said, "Oh, had my power free like my courage been, or had I liberty to use this blade, who slow, who weakest is, soon should be seen. Nor thou, nor thy great vaunts make me afraid, but cruel love I fear, and this fair queen." This said, to challenge him the king forth leapt, but up his mistress start and twixt them stepped. "Will you thus rob me of that gift," quoth she, "which each hath vowed to give by word and oath? You are my champions, let that title be the bond of love and peace between you both. He that displeased is displeased with me, for which of you is grieved, and I not wroth?" Thus warned she them, their hearts for ire nigh broke, in forced peace and rest thus bore love's yoke. All this heard Vafrine as he stood beside, and having learned the truth, he left the tent. That treason was against the Christians' guide contrived he wist, yet wist not how it went. By words and questions far off he tried to find the truth, more difficult, more bent was he to know it, and resolved to die, or of that secret close the intent to spy. Of sly intelligence he proved all ways, all crafts, all wiles that in his thoughts abide. Yet all in vain the man by wit assays to know that false compact and practice hid. But chance, what wisdom could not tell, bewrays. Fortune of all his doubt the knots undid, so that prepared for Godfrey's last mishap, at ease he found the net, and spied the trap. Thither he turned again, where seated was the angry lover twixt her friends and lords. For in that troop much talk he thought would pass, each great assembly store of news affords. He sided there a lusty lovely lass, and with some courtly terms the wench he boards. He feigns acquaintance, and as bold appears as he had known that virgin 20 years. He said, "Would some sweet lady grace me so to choose me for her champion, friend, and knight, proud Godfrey's of Rinaldo's head, I trow, would feel the sharpness of my curtlax bright. Ask me the head, fair mistress, of some foe, for to your beauty vowed is my might." So he began, and meant in speeches wise further to wade, but thus he broke the ice. Therewith he smiled, and smiling gan to frame his looks so to their old and native grace, that towards him another virgin came, heard him, beheld him, and with bashful face said, "For thy mistress choose no other dame but me, on me thy love and service place. I take thee for my champion, and apart would reason with thee, if my knight thou art." Withdrawn, she thus began, "Vafrine, pardie, I know thee well, and me thou know'st of old." To his last trump this drove the subtle spy, but smiling towards her he turned him bold. "Ne'er that I wot I saw thee erst with eye, yet for thy worth all eyes should thee behold. Thus much I know right well, for from the same which erst thou gave me, different is my name. My mother bore me near Biserta's wall, her name was Lesbine, mine is Almansor. I knew long since," quoth she, "what men thee call, and thine estate, dissemble it no more. From me thy friend, hide not thyself at all. If I bewray thee, let me die therefore. I am Erminia, daughter to a prince, but Tancred's slave, thy fellow servant, since 2 happy months within that prison kind, under thy guard rejoiced I to dwell, and thee a keeper meek and good did find. The same I am, behold me well." The squire her lovely beauty called to mind, and marked her visage fair. "From thee expel all fear," she says, "for me live safe and sure. I will thy safety, not thy harm procure. But yet I pray thee, when thou dost return to my dear prison, lead me home again. For in this hateful freedom, even and morn I sigh for sorrow, mourn and weep for pain. But if to spy perchance thou here sojourn, great hap thou hast to know these secrets plain. For I their treasons false trains can say, which few beside can tell, none will bewray." On her he gazed, and silent stood this while. Armida's slights he knew, and trains unjust. Women have tongues of craft, and hearts of guile. They will not, fools that on them trust. For in their speech is death, hell in their smile. At last he said, if hence depart you lust, I will you guide. On this conclude we here, and further speech till fitter time forbear. Forthwith, ere thence the camp removed, to ride they were resolved. Their flight that season fits. Vafrine departs, she to the dames beside returns, and there on thorns a while she sits. Of her new knight she talks, till time and tide to scape unmarked she finds. Then forth she gets, thither where Vafrine her unseen abode. There took she horse, and from the camp they rode. And now in deserts waste and wild arrived, far from the camp, far from resort and sight, Vafrine began, gainst Godfrey's life contrived, the false compacts and trains unfold aright. Then she, those treasons from their spring derived, repeats, and brings their hid deceits to light. 8 knights, she says, all courtiers brave there are, but Ormond strong the rest surpasseth far. These, whether hate or hope of gain them move, conspired have, and framed their treason so. That day when Emeren by fight shall prove to win lost Asia from his Christian foe, these with the cross scored on their arms above, and armed like Frenchmen, will disguised go like Godfrey's guard, that gold and white do wear. Such shall their habit be, and such their gear. Yet each will bear a token in his crest, that so their friends for pagans may them know. But in close fight, when all the soldiers best shall mingled be, to give the fatal blow they will creep near, and pierce Godfredo's breast, while of his faithful guard they bear false show. And all their swords are dipped in poison strong, because each wound shall bring sad death ere long. And for their chieftain wist I knew your guise, what garments, ensigns, and what arms you carry. Those feigned arms he forced me to devise, so that from yours but small or naught they vary. But these unjust commands my thoughts despise. Within their camp therefore I list not tarry. My heart abhors I should this hand defile with spot of treason, or with act of guile. This is the cause, but not the cause alone. And there she ceased and blushed, and on the main cast down her eyes. These last words scant outgone, she would have stopped, nor durst pronounce them plain. The squire what she concealed would know, as one that from her breast her secret thoughts could strain. Of little faith, quoth he, why wouldst thou hide those causes true from me, thy squire and guide? With that she fetched a sigh, sad, sore, and deep, and from her lips her words slow trembling came. Fruitless, she said, untimely, hard to keep. Vain modesty, farewell, and farewell shame. Why hope you, restless love, to bring on sleep? Why strive you, fires, to quench sweet Cupid's flame? No, no, such cares and such respects beseem great ladies, wandering maids them not esteem. That night, fatal to me and Antioch town, then made a prey to her commanding foe, my loss was greater than was seen or known. There ended not, but thence began my woe. Light was the loss of friends, of realm or crown, but with my state I lost myself also, ne'er to be found again. For then I lost my wit, my sense, my heart, my soul almost. Through fire and sword, through blood and death, Vafrine, which all my friends did burn, did kill, did chase, thou knowst I ran to thy dear lord and mine, when first he entered at my father's place, and kneeling with salt tears in my swollen eyne, great prince, quoth I, grant mercy, pity, grace, save not my kingdom, not my life, I said, but save mine honor, let me die a maid. He lift me by the trembling hand from ground, nor stayed he till my humble speech was done, but said, a friend and keeper hast thou found, fair virgin, nor to me in vain you run. A sweetness strange from that sweet voice's sound pierced my heart, my breast's weak fortress won, which creeping through my bosom soft, became a wound, a sickness, and a quenchless flame. He visits me, with speeches kind and grave, he sought to ease my grief and sorrow's smart. He said, I give thee liberty, receive all that is thine, and at thy will depart. Alas, he robbed me when he thought he gave. Free was Herminia, but captived her heart. Mine was the body, his the soul and mind. He gave the cage, but kept the bird behind. But who can hide desire, or love suppress? Oft of his worth with thee in talk I strove. Thou, by my trembling fit, that well couldst guess What fever held me, saidst, thou art in love. But I denied, for what can maids do less? And yet my sighs thy sayings true did prove. Instead of speech, my looks, my tears, mine eyes Told in what flame, what fire thy mistress fries. Unhappy silence! Well I might have told my woes, and for my harms have sought relief, since now my pains and plaints I utter bold, where none that hears can help or ease my grief. From him I parted, and did close upfold my wounds within my bosom. Death was chief of all my hopes and helps, till love's sweet flame plucked off the bridle of respect and shame, and caused me ride to seek my lord and knight. For he that made me sick could make me sound, but on an ambush I mischanced to light, of cruel men in armor clothed round. Hardly I scaped their hands by mature flight, and fled to wilderness and desert ground, and there I lived in groves and forests wild, with gentle grooms and shepherds' daughters mild. But when hot love, which fear had late suppressed, revived again, there nold I longer sit, but rode the way I came, nor e'er took rest, till on like danger, like mishap I hit. A troop, to forage and to spoil addressed, encountered me, nor could I fly from it. Thus was I ta'en, and those that had me caught Egyptians were, and me to Gaza brought, and for a present to their captain gave, whom I entreated and besought so well, that he mine honor had great care to save, and since with fair Armida let me dwell. Thus taken oft, escaped oft I have. Ah, see what haps I passed, what dangers fell. So often captive, free so oft again, still my first bands I keep, still my first chain. And he that did this chain so surely bind about my heart, which none can loose but he, let him not say, go, wandering damsel, find some other home, thou shalt not bide with me. But let him welcome me with speeches kind, and in my wonted prison set me free. Thus spake the princess. Thus she and her guide talked day and night, and on their journey ride. Through the highways Vafrino would not pass, a path more secret, safe, and short he knew. And now close by the city's wall he was, when sun was set, night in the east upflew. With drops of blood besmeared he found the grass, and saw where lay a warrior murdered new, that all bebled the ground. His face to skies he turns, and seems to threat, though dead he lies. His harness and his habit both bewrayed he was a pagan. Forward went the squire, and saw whereas another champion laid dead on the land, all soiled with blood and mire. This was some Christian knight, Vafrino said, and marking well his arms and rich attire, he loosed his helm, and saw his visage plain, and cried, alas, here lies Tancredi slain. The woful virgin tarried and gave heed to the fierce looks of that proud Saracen, till that high cry, full of sad fear and dread, pierced through her heart with sorrow, grief, and pine. At Tancred's name thither she ran with speed, like one half mad or drunk with too much wine. And when she saw his face, pale, bloodless, dead, she lighted, nay, she stumbled from her steed. Her springs of tears she looseth forth, and cries, hither why bring'st thou me, ah, fortune blind, where dead, for whom I lived, my comfort lies? Where war for peace, travail for rest I find. Tancred, I have thee, see thee, Yet thine eyes look not upon thy love and handmaid kind. Undo their doors, their lids fast closed sever. Alas, I find thee for to lose thee ever. I never thought that to mine eyes, my dear, thou couldst have grievous or unpleasant been. But now would blind, or rather dead I were, that thy sad plight might be unknown, unseen. Alas, where is thy mirth and smiling cheer? Where are thine eyes' clear beams and sparkles sheen? Of thy fair cheek where is the purple red, and forehead's whiteness? Are all gone, all dead? Though gone, though dead, I love thee still. Behold, death wounds, but kills not love. Yet if thou live, sweet soul, still in his breast, my follies bold, pardon, love's desires and stealths forgive. Grant me from his pale mouth some kisses cold, since death doth love of just reward deprive. And of thy spoils, sad death, afford me this: let me his mouth, pale, cold, and bloodless, kiss. O gentle mouth, with speeches kind and sweet thou didst relieve my grief, my woe and pain. Ere my weak soul from this frail body fleet, comfort me with one dear kiss or twain. Perchance if we alive had happed to meet, they had been given which now are stolen. O vain, O feeble life, betwixt his lips outfly. O let me kiss thee first, then let me die. Receive my yielding spirit, and with thine guide it to heaven, where all true love hath place. This said, she sighed and tore her tresses fine, and from her eyes two streams poured on his face. The man, revived with those showers divine, awaked, and opened his lips a space. His lips were open, but fast shut his eyes, and with her sighs one sigh from him upflies. The dame perceived that Tancred breathed and sight, which calmed her grief some deal, and eased her fears. Unclose thine eyes, she says, my lord and knight. See my last services, my plaints and tears. See her that dies to see thy woful plight, that of thy pain her part and portion bears. Once look on me, small is the gift I crave, the last which thou canst give or I can have. Tancred looked up, and closed his eyes again, heavy and dim, and she renewed her woe. Quoth Vafrine, cure him first, and then complain. Medicine is life's chief friend, plaint her most foe. They plucked his armor off, and she each vein, each joint and sinew felt, and handled so, and searched so well each thrust, each cut and wound, that hope of life her love and skill soon found. From weariness and loss of blood she spied his greatest pains and anguish most proceed. Naught but her veil amid those deserts wide she had to bind his wounds in so great need. But love could other bands, though strange, provide, and pity wept for joy to see that deed. For with her amber locks cut off each wound she tied. O happy man, so cured, so bound! For why? Her veil was short and thin, those deep and cruel hurts to fasten, roll, and bind. Nor salve nor simple had she,
Yet to keep her knight on live,
strong charms of wondrous kind she said, and from him drove that deadly sleep. That now his eyes he lifted, turned and twined, and saw his squire, and saw that courteous dame in habit strange, and wondered whence she came. He said, O Vafrine, tell me whence comest thou, and who this gentle surgeon is, disclose. She smiled, she sighed, she looked, she wist not how, she wept, rejoiced, she blushed as red as rose. You shall know all, she says. Your surgeon now commands you silence, rest, and soft repose. You shall be sound, prepare my guerdon meet. His head then laid she in her bosom sweet. Vafrine devised this while how he might bear his master home, ere night obscured the land, when lo, a troop of soldiers did appear, whom he descried to be Tancredi's band. With him when he and Argant met they were, but when they went to combat hand for hand, he bade them stay behind, and they obeyed, but came to seek him now, so long he stayed. Besides them many followed that inquest, but these alone found out the rightest way. Upon their friendly arms the men addressed a seat, whereon he sat, he leaned, he lay. Quoth Tancred, "Shall the strong Circassian rest in this broad field, for wolves and crows a prey? Ah, no, defraud not you that champion brave of his just praise, of his due tomb and grave. With his dead bones no longer war have I. Boldly he died, and nobly was he slain. Then let us not that honor him deny, which after death alonely doth remain." The pagan dead they lifted up on high, and after Tancred bore him through the plain. Close by the Virgin chaste did Vafrine ride, as he that was her squire, her guard, her guide. "Not home," quoth Tancred, "to my wonted tent, but bear me to this royal town, I pray, that if, cut short by human accident, I die, there I may see my latest day, the place where Christ upon his cross was rent, to heaven perchance may easier make the way, and ere I yield to death's and fortune's rage, performed shall be my vow and pilgrimage." Thus to the city was Tancredi born, and fell on sleep, laid on a bed of down. Vafrino, where the damsel might sojourn, a chamber got, close, secret, near his own. That done, he came the mighty Duke beforn, and entrance found. For till his news were known, naught was concluded mongst those knights and lords. Their counsel hung on his report and words. Where, weak and weary, wounded Raymond laid, Godfrey was set upon his couch's side, and round about the man a ring was made of lords and knights that filled the chamber wide. There, while the squire his late discovery said, to break his talk none answered, none replied. "My lord," he said, "at your command I went, and viewed their camp, each cabin, booth, and tent. But of that mighty host the number true expect not that I can or should descry. All covered with their armies might you view the fields, the plains, the dales, and mountains high. I saw what way soe'er they went and drew, they spoiled the land, drunk floods and fountains dry. For not whole Jordan could have given them drink, nor all the grain in Syria bread, I think. But yet amongst them many bands are found, both horse and foot, of little force and might, that keep no order, no trumpet sound, that draw no sword, but far off shoot and fight. But yet the Persian army doth abound with many a footman strong and hardy knight. So doth the king's own troop, which all is framed of soldiers old, the immortal squadron named. Immortal called is that band of right, for of that number never wanteth one, but in his empty place some other knight steps in, when any man is dead or gone. This army's leader Emireno hight, like whom in wit and strength are few or none, who hath in charge in plain and pitched field to fight with you, to make you fly or yield. And well I know their army and their host within a day or two will here arrive. But thee, Rinaldo, it behooveth most to keep thy noble head, for which they strive. For all the chief in arms or courage boast, they will the same to Queen Armida give, and for the same she gives herself in price. Such hire will many hands to work entice. The chief of these that have thy murder sworn is Altamore, the king of Samarcand, Adrastus then, whose realm lies near the morn, a hardy giant, bold and strong of hand. This king upon an elephant is born, for under him no horse can stir or stand. The third is Tisipherne, as brave a lord as ever put on helm or girt on sword. This said, from young Rinaldo's angry eyes flew sparks of wrath, flames in his visage shine. He longed to be amid those enemies, nor rest nor reason in his heart could find. But to the Duke Vafrine his talk applies. "The greatest news, my lord, are yet behind. For all their thoughts, their crafts and counsels tend by treason false to bring thy life to end. Then all from point to point again expose the false compact, how it was made and wrought, the arms and ensigns feigned, poison close, Ormondo's vaunt, what praise, what thank exalt, and what reward, and satisfied all those that would demand, inquire, or ask of aught. Silence was made a while, when Godfrey thus: Raymundo, say, what counsel givest thou us? Not as we purposed late. Next morn, quoth he, let us not scale, but round besiege this tower, that those within may have no issue free to sally out and hurt us with their power. Our camp well rested and refreshed see, provided well gainst this last storm and shower, and then in pitched field fight if you will, if not, delay and keep this fortress still. But lest you be endangered, hurt, or slain, of all your cares take care yourself to save. By you this camp doth live, doth win, doth reign. Who else can rule or guide these squadrons brave? And for the traitors shall be noted plain, command your guard to change the arms they have, so shall their guile be known. In their own net so shall they fall, caught in the snare they set. As it hath ever, thus the Duke begun, thy counsel shows thy wisdom and thy love, and what you left in doubt shall thus be done. We will their force in pitched battle prove, closed in this wall and trench, the fight to shun, doth ill this camp beseem, and worse behoove. But we their strength and manhood will assay, and try in open field and open day, the fame of our great conquests to sustain, or bide our looks and threats they are not able. And when this army is subdued and slain, then is our empire settled, firm and stable. The tower shall yield, or but resist in vain, for fear her anchor is, despair her cable. Thus he concludes, and rolling down the west, fast set the stars, and called them all to rest.
End of Book 19. Book 20 of Jerusalem Delivered by Torquato Tasso. Translated by Edward Fairfax. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Thomas Copeland.
The argument. The pagan host arrives, and cruel fight makes with the Christians and their faithful power. The Soldan longs in field to prove his might, with the old king quits the besieged tower. Yet both are slain, and in eternal night a famous hand gives each his fatal hour. Reynald appeased Armida. First the field the Christians win, then praise to God they yield. The sun called up the world from idle sleep, and of the day 10 hours were gone and past, when the bold troop that had the tower to keep espied a sudden mist, that overcast the earth with murksome clouds and darkness deep, and saw it was the Egyptian camp at last which raised the dust, for hills and valleys broad that host did overspread and overload. There with a merry shout and joyful cry the pagans reared from the besieged hold. The cranes from Thrace with such a rumor fly, his hoary frost and snow, when Hyam's old pours down, and fast to warmer regions high, from the sharp winds, fierce storms, and tempests cold. And quick and ready this new hope and aid, their hands to shoot, their tongues to threaten made. From whence their ire, their wrath, and hardy threat proceeds, the French well knew and plain espied. For from the walls and ports the army great they saw, her strength, her number, pomp, and pride, swelled their breasts with valor's noble heat. Battle and fight they wished, arm, arm, they cried. The youth, to give the sign of fight, all prayed their duke, and were displeased because delayed till morning next, for he refused to fight. Their haste and heat he bridled, but not brake, nor yet with sudden fray or skirmish light of these new foes would he vain trial make. After so many wars, he says, good right it is that one day's rest at least you take. For thus in his vain foes he cherish would the hope which in their strength they have and hold. To see Aurora's gentle beam appear, the soldiers armed, pressed and ready lay. The skies were never half so fair and clear as in the breaking of that blessed day. The merry morning smiled, and seemed to wear upon her silver crown sun's golden ray, and without cloud heaven his redoubled light bent down, to see this field, this fray, this fight. When first he saw the daybreak show and shine, Godfrey his host in good array brought out, and to besiege the tyrant Aladine, Raymond he left, and all the faithful rout, that from the towns was come of Palestine, to serve and succor their deliverer stout. And with them left a hardy troop beside, of Gascoigns strong, in arms well proved, oft tried. Such was Godfredo's countenance, such his cheer, that from his eye sure conquest flames and streams. Heaven's gracious favors in his looks appear, and great and goodly more than erst he seems. His face and forehead full of noblesse were, and on his cheek smiled youth's purple beams, and in his gait, his grace, his acts, his eyes, somewhat far more than mortal lives and lies. He had not marched far, ere he espied of his proud foes the mighty host draw nigh. A hill at first he took and fortified at his left hand, which stood his army by. Broad in the front, behind more straight uptied, his army ready stood the fight to try, and to the middle ward well armed he brings his footmen strong, his horsemen served for wings. To the left wing, spread underneath the bent of the steep hill that saved their flank and side, the Roberts twain, two leaders good, he sent. His brother had the middleward to guide. To the right wing himself in person went, down where the plain was dangerous, broad and wide, and where his foes with their great numbers would perchance environ round his squadrons bold. There all his Lorrainers and men of might, all his best armed he placed, and chosen bands, and with those horse some footmen armed light, that archers were, used to that service, stands. The adventurers then in battle and in fight well tried, a squadron famous through all lands, on the right hand he set, some deal aside. Rinaldo was their leader, lord and guide. To whom the Duke, in thee our hope is laid of victory, thou must the conquest gain. Behind this mighty wing so far displayed, thou with thy noble squadron close remain. And when the pagans would our backs invade, assail them then, and make their onset vain. For if I guess aright, they have in mind to compass us, and charge our troops behind. Then through his host, that took so large a scope, he rode and viewed them all, both horse and foot. His face was bare, his helm unclosed and ope. Lightened his eyes, his looks bright fire shot out. He cheers the fearful, comforts them that hope, and to the bold recounts his boasting stout, and to the valiant his adventures hard. These bids he look for praise, those for reward. At last he stayed, where of his squadrons bold and noblest troops assembled was best part. There from a rising bank his will he told, and all that heard his speech thereat took heart. And as the molten snow from mountains cold runs down in streams, with eloquence and art, so from his lips his words and speeches fell, shrill, speedy, pleasant, sweet, and placed well. My hardy host, you conquerors of the East, you scourge wherewith Christ whips his heathen foe, of victory behold the latest feast. See the last day for which you wished alone. Not without cause the Saracens, most and least, our gracious Lord hath gathered here in one. For all your foes and his assembled are, that one day's fight may end 7 years of war. This fight shall bring us many victories, the danger none, the labor will be small. Let not the number of your enemies dismay your hearts, grant fear no place at all. For strife and discord through their army flies, their bands ill ranked themselves entangle shall, and few of them to strike or fight shall come. For some want strength, some heart, some elbow room. This host with whom you must encounter now are men half naked, without strength or skill, from idleness or following the plough, late pressed forth to war against their will. Their swords are blunt, shields thin, soon pierced through. Their banners shake, their bearers shrink, for ill their leaders heard, obeyed, or followed be. Their loss, their flight, their death I well foresee. Their captain, clad in purple, armed in gold, that seems so fierce, so hardy, stout and strong, The Moors or weak Arabians vanquished good, yet can he not resist your valors long. What can he do, though wise, though sage, though bold, in that confusion, trouble, thrust, and throng? Ill known is he, and worse he knows his host. Strange lords ill feared are, ill obeyed of most. But I am captain of this chosen crew, with whom I oft have conquered, triumphed oft. Your lands and lineages long since I knew, each knight obeys my rule, mild, easy, soft. I know each sword, each dart, each shaft I view, although the quarrel fly in skies aloft. Whether the same of Ireland be, or France, and from what bow it comes, what hand perchance. I ask an easy and a usual thing, as you have oft this day, so win the field. Let zeal and honor be your virtue's sting, your lives, my fame, Christ's faith, defend and shield. To earth these pagans slain and wounded bring, tread on their necks, make them all die or yield. What need I more exhort you? From your eyes I see how victory, how conquest flies. Upon the captain, when his speech was done, it seemed a lamp and golden light down came, as from night's azure mantle oft doth run or fall a sliding star or shining flame. But from the bosom of the burning sun proceeded this, and garland wise the same Godfredo's noble head encompassed round, and, as some thought, foreshowed he should be crowned. Perchance, if man's proud thought or saucy tongue have leave to judge or guess at heavenly things, this was the angel which had kept him long, that now came down and hid him with his wings. While thus the Duke bespeaks his armies strong, and every troop and band in order brings, Lord Emeren his host disposed well, and with bold words whet on their courage fell. The man brought forth his army great with speed, in order good his foes at hand he spied. Like the new moon his host two horns did spread, in midst the foot, the horse were on each side. The right wing kept he for himself to lead, great Altamore received the left to guide. The middle ward led Muliases proud, and in that battle fair Armida stood. On the right quarter stood the Indian grim, with Tisipherne and all the king's own band. But where the left wing spread her squadrons trim, o'er the large plain did Altamoro stand, with African and Persian kings with him, and two that came from Meroe's hot sand. And all his crossbows and his slings he placed, where room best served to shoot, to throw, to cast. Thus Emeren his host put in array, and rode from band to band, from rank to rank. His trookman now, and now himself doth say, what spoil his folk shall gain, what praise, what thank. To him that feared, look up, ours is the day, he says. Vile fear to bold hearts never sank. How dareth one against 100 fight? Our cry, our shade will put them all to flight. But to the bold, go, hardy knight, he says, his prey out of the lion's paws go tear. To some before his thoughts the shape he lays, and makes therein the image true appear. How his sad country him entreats and prays, his house, his loving wife, his children dear. Suppose, quoth he, thy country doth beseech and pray thee thus, suppose this is her speech: defend my laws, uphold my temples brave, my blood from washing of my streets withhold, from ravishing my virgins keep, and save thine ancestors' dead bones and ashes cold. To thee thy fathers dear and parents grave show their uncovered heads, white, hoary, old. To thee thy wife her breasts with tears o'erspread, thy sons their cradles shows, thy marriage bed. To all the rest, you for her honor's sake, whom Asia makes her champions, by your might upon these thieves, weak, feeble, few, must take a sharp revenge, yet just, deserved, and right. Thus many words in several tongues he spake, and all his sundry nations to sharp fight encouraged. But now the dukes had done their speeches all, the hosts together run. It was a great, a strange, and wondrous sight, when front to front those noble armies met. How every troop, how in each troop each knight stood pressed to move, to fight, and praise to get. Loose in the wind wavered their ensigns light, trembled the plumes that on their crests were set. Their arms, impresses, colors, gold and stone, against the sunbeams smiled, flamed, sparkled, shone. Of dry-topped oaks they seemed 2 forests thick, so did each host with spears and pikes abound. Bent were their bows, in rests their lances stick, their hands shook swords, their slings held cobbles round. Each steed to run was ready, pressed and quick at his commander's spur, his hand, his sound. He chafes, he stamps, careers, and turns about, he foams, snorts, neighs, and fire and smoke breathes out. Horror itself in that fair sight seemed fair, and pleasure flew amid sad dread and fear. The trumpets shrill that thundered in the air were music mild and sweet to every ear. The faithful camp, though less, yet seemed more rare in that strange noise, more warlike, shrill and clear, in notes more sweet. The pagan trumpets jar, these sung, their armors shine, these glistered far. The Christian trumpets give the deadly call, the pagans answer, and the fight accept. The godly Frenchmen on their knees down fall to pray, and kissed the earth, and then upleapt to fight. The land between was vanished all, in combat close each host to other stepped. For now the wings had skirmish hot begun, and with their battles forth the footmen run. But who was first of all the Christian train, that gave the onset first won renown? Gildippes, thou wert she? For by thee slain the king of Orms, Hyrcano, tumbled down. The man's breastbone thou clovest and rent in twain, so heaven with honor would thee bless and crown. Pierced through he fell, and falling heard withal his foe praised for her strength and for his fall. Her lance thus broke, the hardy dame forth drew with her strong hand a fine and trenchant blade, and gainst the Persians fierce and bold she flew, and in their troop wide streets and lanes she made. Even in the girdling steed divided new in pieces twain, a pyre on earth she laid. And then Alcaro's head she swept off clean, which like a football tumbled on the green. A blow felled Artaxerxes, with a thrust was Argius slain. The first lay in a trance. Ismael's left hand cut off fell in the dust, for on his wrist her sword fell down by chance. The hand let go the bridle where it lust. The blow upon the courser's ears did glance, who felt the reins at large, and with the stroke half mad, the ranks disordered, troubled broke. All these and many more by time forgot she slew and wounded, when against her came the angry Persians all, cast on a knot, for on her person would they purchase fame. But her dear spouse and husband wanted not in so great need to aid the noble dame. Thus joined, the haps of war unhurt they prove, their strength was double, double was their love. The noble lover's use well might you see, a wondrous guise, till then unseen, unheard. To save themselves forgot both he and she, each other's life did keep, defend, and guard. The strokes that gainst her lord discharged be, the dame had care to bear, to break, to ward. His shield kept off the blows bent on his dear, which if need be his naked head should bear. So each saved other, each for other's wrong would vengeance take, but not revenge their own. The valiant Soldan, Artabano strong, a Balkan isle by her was overthrown, and by his hand, the bodies dead among, Alvante, that durst his mistress wound, fell down, and she between the eyes hit Aramont, who hurt her lord, and cleft in twain his front. But Altamore, who had that wing to lead, far greater slaughter on the Christians made, for where he turned his sword or twined his steed, he slew, or man and beast on earth down laid. Happy was he that was at first struck dead, that fell not down on live, for whom his blade had speared, the same cast in the dusty street, his horse tore with his teeth, bruised with his feet. By this brave Persian's valor killed and slain were strong Brunello and Ardonio great. The first his head and helm had cleft in twain, the last in stranger wise he did entreat, for through his heart he pierced, and through the vein where laughter had his fountain and his seat, so that, a dreadful thing, believed uneath, he laughed for pain, and laughed himself to death. Nor these alone with that accursed knife of this sweet light and breath deprived lie, but with that cruel weapon lost their life Gentonio, Guascar, Rosamond, and Guy. Who knows how many in that fatal strife he slew? What knights his courser fierce made die? The names and countries of the people slain, who tells? Their wounds and deaths who can explain? With this fierce king encounter durst not one durst combat him in equal field. Gildippes undertook that task alone, no doubt could make her shrink, no danger yield. By Thermodont was never Amazone that managed steeled axe or carried shield, that seemed so bold as she, so strong, so light, when forth she run to meet that dreadful knight. She hit him where with gold and rich mail his diadem did on his helmet flame. She broke and cleft the crown, and caused him veil his proud and lofty top, his crest down came. Strong seemed her arm that could so well assail. The pagan shook for spite and blushed for shame. Forward he rushed, and would at once requite shame with disgrace, and with revenge despite. Right on the front he gave that lady kind a blow, so huge, so strong, so great, so sore, that out of sense and feeling down she twined. But her dear knight his love from ground up bore. Were it their fortune or his noble mind, he stayed his hand, and struck the dame no more. A lion so stalks by, and with proud eyes beholds, but scorns to hurt a man that lies. This while Ormondo false, whose cruel hand was armed and pressed to give the traitorous blow, with all his fellows mongst Godfredo's band entered unseen, disguised that few them know. The thievish wolves, when night o'ershades the land, that seem like faithful dogs in shape and show, so to the closed folds in secret creep, and entrance seek to kill some harmless sheep. He approached nigh, and to Godfredo's side the bloody pagan now was placed near. But when his colors gold and white he spied, and saw the other signs that forged were, "See, see, this traitor false," the captain cried, "that like a Frenchman would in show appear, behold how near his mates and he are crept." This said, upon the villain forth he leapt. Deadly he wounded him, and that false knight nor strikes nor wards, nor striveth to be gone, but as Medusa's head were in his sight, stood like a man new turned to marble stone. All lances broke, unsheathed all weapons bright, all quivers emptied were, on them alone. In parts so many were the traitors cleft, that those dead men had no dead bodies left. When Godfrey was with pagan blood bespread, he entered then the fight, and that was past where the bold Persian fought and combated. Where the close ranks he opened, cleft and brast. Before the night the troops and squadrons fled, as Afric dust before the southern blast. The Duke recalled them, in array them placed, stayed those that fled, and him assailed that chased. The champions strong there fought a battle stout. Troy never saw the like by Xanthus old. A conflict sharp there was meanwhile on foot, twixt Baldwin good and Muliasus bold. The horsemen also near the mountain's root, and in both wings, a furious skirmish hold, and where the barbarous duke in person stood, twixt Tissaphernes and Adrastus proud. With Emeren Robert the Norman strove. Long time they fought, yet neither lost nor won. The other Robert's helm the Indian clove, and broke his arms, their fight would soon be done. From place to place did Tissaphernes rove, and found no match, against him none durst run. But where the press was thickest, thither flew the knight, and at each stroke felled, hurt, or slew. Thus fought they long, yet neither shrink nor yield. In equal balance hung their hope and fear. All full of broken lances lay the field, all full of arms that cloven and shattered were. Of swords some to the body nail the shield, some cut men's throats, and some their bellies tear. Of bodies some upright, some groveling lay, and for themselves eat graves out of the clay. Beside his lord slain lay the noble steed. There friend with friend lay killed, like lovers true. There foe with foe, the live under the dead, the victor under him whom late he slew. A hoarse unperfect sound did each where spread, whence neither silence nor plain outcries flew. Their fury roars, ire threats, and woe complains. One weeps, another cries, he sighs for pains. The arms that late so fair and glorious seem, now soiled and slubbered, sad and sullen grow. The steel his brightness lost, the gold his beam, the colors had no pride nor beauty show. The plumes and feathers on their crests that stream are strewed wide upon the earth below. The hosts, both clad in blood, in dust and mire, had changed their cheer, their pride, their rich attire. But now the Moors, Arabians, Ethiops black, on the left wing that held the utmost marge, spread forth their troops, and purposed at the back and side their heedless foes to assail and charge. Slingers and archers were not slow nor slack to shoot and cast, when with his battle large Rinaldo came, whose fury, haste, and ire seemed earthquake, thunder, tempest, storm, and fire. The first he met was Asimir, his throne that set in Meroe's hot sunburnt land. He cut his neck in twain, flesh, skin, and bone, the sable head down tumbled on the sand. But when by death of this black prince alone the taste of blood and conquest once he fand, whole squadrons then, whole troops to earth he brought, things wondrous, strange, incredible he wrought. He gave more deaths than strokes, and yet his blows upon his feeble foes fell oft and thick. To move 3 tongues as a fierce serpent shows, which rolls the one she hath, swift, speedy, quick. So thinks each pagan, each Arabian trows, he wields 3 swords, all in one hilt that stick. His readiness their eyes so blinded hath, their dread that wonder bred, fear gave it faith. The Afric tyrants and the Negro kings fell down on heaps, drowned each in other's blood. Upon their people ran the knights he brings, pricked forward by their guides and example good. Killed were the pagans, broke their bows and slings. Some died, some fell, some yielded, none withstood. A massacre was this, no fight. These put their foes to death, those hold their throats to cut. Small while they stood with heart and hardy face, on their bold breasts deep wounds and hurts to bear, but fled away, and troubled in the chase their ranks disordered be with too much fear. Rinaldo followed them from place to place, till quite discomfort and dispersed they were. That done he stays, and all his knights recalls, and scorns to strike his foe that flies or falls. Like as the wind, stopped by some wood or hill, grows strong and fierce, tears boughs and trees in twain, but with mild blasts, more temperate, gentle, still, blows through the ample field or spacious plain. Against the rocks, as sea waves murmur shrill, but silent pass amid the open main. Rinaldo so, when none his force withstood, assuaged his fury, calmed his angry mood. He scorned upon their fearful backs that fled to wreak his ire and spend his force in vain. But gainst the footmen strong his troops he led, whose side the Moors had open left and plain. The Africans that should have succored that battle, all were run away or slain. Upon their flank with force and courage stout his men at arms assailed the bands on foot. He brake their pikes, and brake their close array, entered their battle, felled them down around. So wind or tempest with impetuous sway the ears of ripened corn strikes flat to ground. With blood, arms, bodies dead, the hardened clay plastered the earth, no grass nor green was found. The horsemen running through and through their bands, kill, murder, slay, few scape, not one withstands. Rinaldo came where his forlorn Armide sat in her golden chariot mounted high. A noble guard she had on every side, of lords, of lovers, and much chivalry. She knew the man when first his arms she spied. Love, hate, wrath, sweet desire strove in her eye. He changed some deal his look and countenance bold, she changed from frost to fire, from heat to cold. The prince passed by the chariot of his dear, like one that did his thoughts elsewhere bestow, yet suffered not her knights and lovers near their rival so to scape withouten blow. One drew his sword, another couched his spear, herself an arrow sharp set in her bow. Disdain her ire new sharped and kindled hath, but love appeased her, love assuaged her wrath. Love bridled fury, and revived of new his fire, not dead, though buried in displeasure. 3 times her angry hand the bow updrew, and thrice again let slack the string at leisure. But wrath prevailed at last, the reed out flew, for love finds mean, but hatred knows no measure. Out flew the shaft, but with the shaft this charm, this wish she sent, heaven grant it do no harm. She bids the reed return the way it went, and pierce her heart, which so unkind could prove. Such force had love, though lost and vainly spent. What strength hath happy, kind, and mutual love? But she that gentle thought did straight repent, wrath, fury, kindness in her bosom strove. She would not that she missed or hit, her eyes, her heart, her wishes followed it. But yet in vain the quarrel lighted not, for on his hauberk hard the knight it hit. Too hard for woman's shaft or woman's shot, instead of piercing, there it broke and split. He turned away. She burnt with fury hot, and thought he scorned her power, and in that fit shot oft and oft, her shafts no entrance found, and while she shot, love gave her wound on wound. And is he then unpierceable, quoth she, that neither force nor foe he needs regard? His limbs perchance armed with that hardness be, which makes his heart so cruel and so hard. No shot that flies from eye or hand I see hurts him, such rigor doth his person guard. Armed or disarmed, his foe or mistress kind, despised alike, like hate, like scorn I find. But what new form is left, device or art, by which to this exchanged I might find grace? For in my knights and all that take my part, I see no help, no hope, no trust I place. To his great prowess, might, and valiant heart, all strength is weak, all courage vile and base. This said she, for she saw how through the field her champions fly, faint, tremble, fall, and yield. Nor left alone can she her person save, but to be slain or taken stands in fear. Though with her bow a javelin long she have, yet weak was Phoebe's bow, blunt Pallas' spear. But as the swan that sees the eagle brave, threatening her flesh and silver plumes to tear, falls down to hide her amongst the shady brooks, such were her fearful motions, such her looks. But Altamore this while that strove and sought from shameful flight his Persian host to stay, that was discomfort and destroyed to naught, whilst he alone maintained the fight and fray, seeing distressed the goddess of his thought, to aid her ran, nay flew, and laid away all care both of his honor and his host. If she were safe, let all the world be lost. To the ill-guarded chariot swift he flew, his weapon made him way with bloody war. Meanwhile Lord Godfrey and Rinaldo slew his feeble bands, his people murdered are. He saw their loss, but aided not his crew, a better lover than a leader far. He set Armida safe, then turned again with tardy succor, for his folk were slain. And on that side the woeful prince beheld the battle lost. No help nor hope remained. But on the other wing the Christians yield, and fly, such vantage there the Egyptians gained. One of the Roberts was nigh slain in field, the other by the Indian strong constrained to yield himself his captive and his slave. Thus equal loss and equal foil they have. Godfredo took the time and season fit to bring again his squadrons in array, and either camp well ordered, ranged, and knit, renewed the furious battle, fight, and fray. New streams of blood were shed, new swords them hit, new combats fought, new spoils were borne away, and unresolved and doubtful on each side did praise and conquest, Mars and fortune ride. Between the armies twain, while thus the fight waxed sharp, hot, cruel, though renewed but late, the Soldan clomb up to the tower's height, and saw far off their strife and fell debate, as from some stage or theatre the knight saw played the tragedy of human state, saw death, blood, murder, woe, and horror strange, and the great acts of fortune, chance, and change. At first astonished and amazed he stood, then burnt with wrath, and self-consuming ire swelled in his bosom like a raging flood. To be amid that battle, such desire, such haste he had, he donned his helmet good, his other arms he had before entire. Up, up, he cried, no more within this fortress stay, come, follow, die or win. Whether the same were providence divine that made him leave the fortress he possessed, for that the empire proud of Palestine this day should fall, to rise again more blessed, or that he breaking felt the fatal line of life, and would meet death with constant breast, furious and fierce he did the gates unbar, and sudden rage brought forth, and sudden war. Nor stayed he till the folk on whom he cried assemble might, but out alone he flies, 1,000 foes the man alone defied, and ran among 1,000 enemies. But with his fury called from side to side, the rest ran out, and Aladine forth hies. The cowards had no fear, the wise no care. This was not hope nor courage, but despair. The dreadful Turk with sudden blows downcast the first he met, nor gave them time to plain or pray. In murdering them he made such haste, that dead they fell ere one could see them slain. From mouth to mouth, from eye to eye, forth passed the fear and terror, that the faithful train of Syrian folk, not used to dangerous fight, were broken, scattered, and nigh put to flight. But with less terror and disorder less, the Gascoigns kept array, and kept their ground. Though most the loss and peril them oppress, unwares assailed they were, unready found. No ravening tooth or talon hard, I guess, of beast or eager hawk doth slay and wound so many sheep or fowls, weak, feeble, small, as his sharp sword killed knights and soldiers tall. It seemed his thirst and hunger swage he would with their slain bodies and their blood poured out. With him his troops and Aladino old slew the besiegers, killed the Gascoigns rout. But Raymond ran to meet the Soldan bold, nor to encounter him had fear or doubt, though his right hand by proof too well he know, which laid him late for dead at one huge blow. They met, and Raymond fell amid the field, this blow again upon his forehead light. It was the fault and weakness of his eild, age is not fit to bear strokes of such might. Each one lift up his sword, advanced his shield, those would destroy, and these defend the knight. On went the Soldan, for the man he thought was slain, or easily might be captive brought. Among the rest he ran, he raged, he smote, and in small space, small time, great wonders wrought. And as his rage him led, and fury hote, to kill and murder, matter new he sought. As from his supper poor, with hungry throat, a peasant hastes to a rich feast brought. So from this skirmish to the battle great he ran, and quenched with blood his fury's heat. Where battered was the wall he sallied out, and to the field in haste and heat he goes. With him went rage and fury, fear and doubt remained behind among his scattered foes. To win the conquest strove his squadron stout, which he unperfect left, yet loath to lose the day, the Christians fight, resist, and die, and ready were to yield, retire, and fly. The Gascoign bands retired, but kept array, the Syrian people ran away outright. The fight was near the place where Tancred lay, his house was full of noise and great affright. He rose, and looked forth to see the fray, though every limb were weak, faint, void of might. He saw the country lie, his men o'erthrown, some beaten back, some killed, some felled down. Courage in noble hearts that ne'er is spent, yet fainted not, though faint were every limb, but reinforced each member cleft and rent, and want of blood and strength supplied in him. In his left hand his heavy shield he hent, nor seemed the weight too great. His curtlax trim his right hand drew, nor for more arms he stood or stayed. He needs no more whose heart is good. But coming forth cried, "Whither will you run, and leave your leader to his foes in prey? What, shall these heathen of his armor won in their vile temples hang up trophies gay? Go home to Gascoigne then, and tell his son that where his father died, you ran away." This said, against 1,000 armed foes he did his breast, weak, naked, sick, oppose. And with his heavy, strong, and mighty targe, that with 7 hard bulls' hides was surely lined, and strengthened with a cover thick and large of stiff and well attempered steel behind, he shielded Raymond from the furious charge, from swords, from darts, from weapons of each kind, and all his foes drove back with his sharp blade, that sure and safe he lay, as in a shade. Thus saved, thus shielded, Raymond gan respire. He rose and reared himself in little space, and in his bosom burnt the double fire of vengeance. Wrath his heart, shame filled his face. He looked around to spy, such was his ire, the man whose stroke had laid him in that place, whom when he sees not, for disdain he quakes, and on his people sharp revengement takes. The Gascoigns turn again, their lord in haste to venge their loss, his band reordered brings. The troop that durst so much now stood aghast, for where sad fear grew late, now boldness springs. Now followed they that fled, fled they that chased. So in 1 hour altereth the state of things. Raymond requites his loss, shame, hurt, and all, and with 100 deaths revenged one fall. Whilst Raymond wreaked thus his just disdain on the proud heads of captains, lords, and peers, he spies great Zion's king amid the train, and to him leaps, and high his sword he rears, and on his forehead strikes and strikes again, till helm and head he breaks, he cleaves, he tears. Down fell the king, the guiltless land he bit, that now keeps him, because he kept not it. Their guides, one murdered thus, the other gone, the troops divided were in diverse thought. Despair made some run headlong gainst their foe, to seek sharp death that comes uncalled, unsought. And some that laid their hope on flight alone, fled to their fort again. Yet chance so wrought, that with the flyers in the victors pass, and so the fortress won and conquered was. The hold was won, slain were the men that fled, in courts, halls, chambers high, above, below. Old Raymond fast up to the leads him sped, and there of victory true sign and show, his glorious standard to the wind he spread, that so both armies his success might know. But Solomon saw not the town was lost, for far from thence he was, and near the host. Into the field he came, the lukewarm blood did smoke and flow through all the purple field. There of sad death the court and palace stood, there did he triumphs lead and trophies bield. An armed steed fast by the Soldan yode, that had no guide nor lord the reins to wield. The tyrant took the bridle and bestrode the courser's empty back, and forth he rode. Great, yet but short and sudden, was the aid that to the pagans faint and weak he brought. A thunderbolt he was, you would have said, great, yet that comes and goes as swift as thought, and of his coming swift and flight unstayed, eternal signs in hardest rocks hath wrought. For by his hand 100 knights were slain, but time forgot hath all their names but twain. Gildippes fair, and Edward thy dear lord, your noble death, sad end, and woful fate, if so much power our vulgar tongue afford, to all strange wits, strange ears, let me dilate, that ages all your love and sweet accord, your virtue, prowess, worth may imitate. And some kind servant of true love that hears, may grace your death, my verses, with some tears. The noble lady thither boldly flew, where the fierce Soldan fought, and him defied. 2 mighty blows she gave the Turk untrue, one cleft his shield, the other pierced his side. The prince the damsel by her habit knew. See, see this mankind's strumpet, see, he cried, this shameless whore. For thee fit weapons were thy neeld and spindle, not a sword and spear. This said, full of disdain, rage, and despite, a strong, a fierce, a deadly stroke he gave, and pierced her armor, pierced her bosom white. Were they no blows, but blows of love to have. Her dying hand let go the bridle quite. She faints, she falls, twixt life and death she strave. Her lord to help her came, but came too late. Yet was not that his fault, it was his fate. What should he do? To divers parts him called just ire and pity kind. One bids him go and succor his dear lady, like to fall. The other calls for vengeance on his foe. Love biddeth both, love says he must do all, and with his ire joins grief, with pity woe. What did he then? With his left hand the knight would hold her up, revenge her with his right. But to resist against a knight so bold, too weak his will and power divided were, so that he could not his fair love uphold, nor kill the cruel man that slew his dear. His arm that did his mistress kind enfold, the Turk cut off. Pale grew his looks and cheer, he let her fall, himself fell by her side, and, for he could not save her, with her died. As the high elm, whom his dear vine hath twined fast in her 100 arms and holds embraced, bears down to earth his spouse and darling kind, if storm or cruel steel the tree down cast, and her full grapes to naught doth bruise and grind, spoils his own leaves, faints, withers, dies at last, and seems to mourn and die, not for his own, but for her death with him that lies o'erthrown. So fell he mourning, mourning for the dame whom life and death had made forever his. They would have spoke, but not one word could frame, deep sobs their speech, sweet sighs their language is. Each gazed on other's eyes, and while the same is lawful, join their hands, embrace and kiss. And thus sharp death their knot of life untied, together fainted they, together died. But now swift fame her nimble wings dispread, and told each where their chance, their fate, their fall. Rinaldo heard the case by one that fled from the fierce Turk, and brought him news of all. Disdain, goodwill, woe, wrath, the champion led to take revenge, shame, grief, for vengeance call. But as he went, Adrastus with his blade forestalled the way, and show of combat made. The giant cried, by sundry signs I note, that whom I wish, I search, thou art he. I mark each worthy's shield, his helm, his coat, and all this day have called and cried for thee. To my sweet saint I have thy head devote, thou must my sacrifice, my offering be. Come, let us here our strength and courage try, thou art Armida's foe, her champion I. Thus he defied him, on his front before, and on his throat he struck him, yet the blow his helmet neither bruised, cleft, nor tore, but in his saddle made him bend and bow. Rinaldo hit him on the flank so sore, that neither art nor herb could help him now. Down fell the giant strong, one blow such power, such puissance had, so falls a thundered tower. With horror, fear, amazedness, and dread, cold were the hearts of all that saw the fray, and Solomon that viewed that noble deed trembled. His paleness did his fear bewray, for in that stroke he did his end areed. He wist not what to think, to do, to say, a thing in him unused, rare and strange. But so doth heaven men's hearts turn, alter, change. As when the sick or frantic men oft dream in their unquiet sleep and slumber short, and think they run some speedy course, and seem to move their legs and feet in hasty sort, yet feel their limbs far slower than the stream of their vain thoughts that bears them in this sport, and oft would speak, would cry, would call or shout, yet neither sound nor voice nor word send out. So run to fight the angry Soldan would, and did enforce his strength, his might, his ire, yet felt not in himself his courage old, his wonted force, his rage and hot desire. His eyes that sparkled wrath and fury bold grew dim and feeble, fear had quenched that fire. And in his heart 100 passions fought, yet not on fear or base retire he thought. While unresolved he stood, the victor knight arrived, and seemed in quickness, haste, and speed, in boldness, greatness, goodliness, and might, above all princes born of human seed. The Turk small while resists, not death nor fight made him forget his state or race through dread. He fled no strokes, he fetched no groan or sigh, bold were his motions last, proud, stately, high. Now when the Soldan in these battles past, that Antaeus like oft fell, oft rose again, ever more fierce, more fell down at last to lie forever. When this prince was slain, fortune that seld is stable, firm or fast, no longer durst resist the Christian train, but ranged herself in row with Godfrey's knights. With them she serves, she runs, she rides, she fights. The pagan troops, the king's own squadron, fled. Of all the East the strength, the pride, the flower. Late called immortal, now discomfited, it lost that title proud, and lost all power. To him that with the royal standard fled, thus Emireno said with speeches sour: Art not thou he to whom to bear I gave my king's great banner, and his standard brave? This ensign, Rimedon, I gave not thee to be the witness of thy fear and flight. Coward, dost thou thy lord and captain see in battle strong, and runst thyself from fight? What seek'st thou? Safety? Come, return with me. The way to death, his path to virtue right. Here let him fight that would escape, for this the way to honor, way to safety is. The man returned, and swelled with scorn and shame. The Duke with speeches grave exhorts the rest. He threats, he strikes sometime, till back they came, and rage gainst force, despair gainst death addressed. Thus of his broken armies gan he frame a battle now. Some hope dwelt in his breast, but Tissaphernes bold revived him most, who fought and seemed to win when all was lost. Wonders that day wrought noble Tisipherne. The hardy Normans all he overthrew. The Flemings fled before the champion stern. Garnier, Rogero, Gerard bold he slew. His glorious deeds to praise and fame etern his life's short date prolonged, enlarged and drew. And then, as he that set sweet life at naught, the greatest peril, danger most he sought. He spied Rinaldo, and although his field of azure purple now and sanguine shows, and though the silver bird amid his shield were armed jewels, yet he the champion knows, and says, here greatest peril is. Heavens yield strength to my courage, fortune to my blows, that fair Armida her revenge may see. Help, Macon, for his arms I vow to thee. Thus prayed he, but all his vows were vain. Mahound was deaf, or slept in heavens above, and as a lion strikes him with his train, his native wrath to quicken and to move, so he awaked his fury and disdain, and sharped his courage on the whetstone love. Himself he saved behind his mighty targe, and forward spurred his steed, and gave the charge. The Christian saw the hardy warrior come, and leaped forth to undertake the fight. The people round about gave place and room, and wondered on that fierce and cruel sight. Some praised their strength, their skill and courage some. Such and so desperate blows struck either knight, that all that saw forgot both ire and strife, their wounds, their hurts, forgot both death and life. One struck, the other did both strike and wound. His arms were surer, and his strength was more. From Tisipherne the blood streamed down around. His shield was cleft, his helm was rent and tore. The dame that saw his blood besmear the ground, his armor broke, limbs weak, wounds deep and sore, and all her guard dead, fled and overthrown, thought now her field lay waste, her hedge lay down, environed with so brave a troop but late. Now stood she in her chariot all alone. She feared bondage, and her life did hate. All hope of conquest and revenge was gone. Half mad and half amazed, from where she sat she leaped down, and fled from friends and foe. On a swift horse she mounts, and forth she rides alone, save for disdain and love her guides. In days of old Queen Cleopatra so alone fled from the fight and cruel fray, against Augustus great his happy foe, leaving her lord to loss and sure decay. And as that lord for love let honor go, followed her flying sails and lost the day, so Tisipherne the fair and fearful dame would follow, but his foe forbids the same. But when the pagan's joy and comfort fled, it seemed the sun was set, the day was night. Gainst the brave prince with whom he combated, he turned, and on the forehead struck the knight. When thunders forged are in Typhoeus' bed, not Bronte's hammer falls so swift, so right. The furious stroke fell on Rinaldo's crest, and made him bend his head down to his breast. The champion in his stirrups high upstart, and cleft his hauberk hard and tender side, and sheathed his weapon in the pagan's heart, the castle where man's life and soul do bide. The cruel sword his breast and hinder part with double wound unclosed and opened wide, and two large doors made for his life and breath, which passed and cured hot love with frozen death. This done, Rinaldo stayed and looked around where he should harm his foes or help his friends. Nor of the pagans saw he squadron sound. Each standard falls, ensign to earth descends. His fury quiet then and calm he found, there all his wrath, his rage, and rancor ends. He called to mind how, far from help or aid, Armida fled, alone, amazed, afraid. Well saw he when she fled, and with that sight the prince had pity, courtesy, and care. He promised her to be her friend and knight, when erst he left her in the island bare. The way she fled he ran and rode aright, her palfrey's feet signs in the grass outwear. But she this while found out an ugly shade, fit place for death, where naught could life persuade. Well pleased was she with those shadows brown, and yet displeased with luck, with life, with love. There from her steed she lighted, there laid down her bows and shafts, her arms that helpless prove. There lie with shame, she says, disgraced, o'erthrown. Blunt are the weapons, blunt the arms I move. Weak to revenge my harms, or harm my foe, my shafts are blunt. Ah, love, would thine were so. Alas, among so many could not one draw blood, one wound, or rend his skin? All other breasts to you are marble stone. Dare you then pierce a woman's bosom thin? See, see my naked heart, on this alone employ your force, this fort is Eath to win, and love will shoot you from his mighty bow. Weak is the shot that dripple falls in snow. I pardon will your fear and weakness past. Be strong mine arrows, cruel, sharp, gainst me. Ah, wretch, how is thy chance and fortune cast, if placed in these thy good and comfort be? But since all hope is vain, all help is waste, since hurts ease hurts, wounds must cure wounds in thee, then with thine arrow's stroke cure stroke of love. Death for thy heart must salve and surgeon prove. And happy me, if being dead and slain I bear not with me this strange plague to hell. Love, stay behind, come thou with me, disdain, and with my wronged soul forever dwell. Or else with it turn to the world again, and vex that knight with dreams and visions fell, and tell him when twixt life and death I strove, my last wish was revenge, last word was love. And with that word, half mad, half dead she seems, an arrow poignant, strong, and sharp she took. When her dear knight found her in these extremes, now fit to die and pass the Stygian brook, now pressed to quench her own and beauty's beams, now death sat on her eyes, death in her look. When to her back he stepped, and stayed her arm, stretched forth to do that service last harm, she turns, and ere she knows, her lord she spies, whose coming was unwished, unthought, unknown. She shrieks, and twines away her stainful eyes from his sweet face. She falls dead in a swoon, falls as a flower half cut that bending lies. He held her up, and lest she tumble down, under her tender side his arm he placed, his hand her girdle loosed, her gown unlaced, and her fair face, fair bosom he bedews with tears, tears of remorse, of ruth, of sorrow. As the pale rose her color lost renews, with the fresh drops fallen from the silver morrow, so she revives, and cheeks empurpled shows, moist with her own tears, and with tears they borrow. Thrice looked she up, her eyes thrice closed she, as who say, let me die ere look on thee. And his strong arm with weak and feeble hand she would have thrust away, loosed and untwined. Oft strove she, but in vain, to break that band, for he, the hold he got, not yet resigned. Herself fast bound in those dear knots she fand, dear, though she feigned scorn, strove and repined. At last she speaks, she weeps, complains and cries, yet durst not, did not, would not see his eyes. Cruel at thy departure, at return as cruel. Say what chance thee hither guideth? Wouldst thou prevent her death, whose heart forlorn for thee death strokes each hour divideth? Comest thou to save my life? Alas, what scorn, what torment for Armida poor abideth? No, no, thy crafts and sleights I will descry, but she can little do that cannot die. Thy triumph is not great, nor well arrayed, unless in chains thou lead a captive dame, a dame now ta'en by force, before betrayed. This is thy greatest glory, greatest fame. Time was that thee of love and life I prayed. Let death now end my love, my life, my shame. Yet let not thy false hand bereave this breath, for if it were thy gift, hateful were death. Cruel, myself an 100 ways can find to rid me from thy malice, from thy hate. If weapons sharp, if poisons of all kind, if fire, if strangling fail in that estate, yet ways enough I know to stop this wind. 1,000 entries hath the house of fate. I'll leave these flatteries, leave weak hope to move. Cease, cease, my hope is dead, dead is my love. Thus mourned she, and from her watery eyes disdain and love dropped down, rolled up in tears. From his pure fountains ran 2 streams likewise, wherein chaste pity and mild ruth appears. Thus with sweet words the queen he pacifies. Madam, appease your grief, your wrath, your fears, for to be crowned, not scorned, your life I save. Your foe, nay, but your friend, your knight, your slave. But if you trust no speech, no oath, no word, yet in mine eyes my zeal, my truth behold. For to that throne whereof thy sire was lord, I will restore thee, crown thee with that gold. And if high heaven would so much grace afford, as from thy heart this cloud, this veil unfold of paganism, in all the east no dame should equalize thy fortune, state, and fame. Thus plaineth he, thus prays, and his desire endears with sighs that fly and tears that fall. That as against the warmth of Titan's fire snow drifts consume on tops of mountains tall, so melts her wrath, but love remains entire. Behold, she says, your handmaid and your thrall, my life, my crown, my wealth use at your pleasure. Thus death her life became, loss proved her treasure. This while the captain of the Egyptian host, that saw his royal standard laid on ground, saw Rimodon, that ensign's prop and post, by Godfrey's noble hand killed with one wound, and all his folk discomfit, slain and lost. No coward was in this last battle found, but rode about and sought, nor sought in vain, some famous hand of which he might be slain. Against Lord Godfrey boldly out he flew, for nobler foe he wished not, could not spy. Of desperate courage showed he tokens true, where'er he joined, or stayed, or passed by, and cried to the Duke as near he drew, behold, of thy strong hand I come to die, yet trust to overthrow thee with my fall. My castle's ruin shall break down thy wall. This said, forth spurred they both high advanced their swords aloft, both struck at once, both hit. His left arm wounded had the knight of France, his shield was pierced, his vantbrace cleft and split. The pagan backward fell, half in a trance, on his left ear his foe so hugely smit. And as he sought to rise, Godfredo's sword pierced him through, so died that army's lord. Of his great host, when Emeren was dead, fled the small remnant that alive remained. Godfrey espied, as he turned his steed, great Altamore on foot, with blood all stained, with half a sword, half helm upon his head, gainst whom 100 fought, yet not one gained. Cease, cease this strife, he cried, and thou, brave knight, yield. I am Godfrey, yield thee to my might. He that till then his proud and haughty heart to act of humbleness did never bend, when that great name he heard, from the north part of our wide world renowned to Ethiop's end, answered, I yield to thee, thou worthy art. I am thy prisoner, fortune is thy friend. On Altamoro great thy conquest bold, of glory shall be rich, and rich of gold. My loving queen, my wife and lady kind, shall ransom me with jewels, gold, and treasure. God shield, quoth Godfrey, that my noble mind should praise, and virtue so by profit measure. All that thou hast from Persia and from Ind, enjoy it still, therein I take no pleasure. I set no rent on life, no price on blood. I fight and sell not war for gold or good.
This said, he gave him to his knights to keep, and after those that fled his course he bent. They to their rampiers fled and trenches deep, yet could not so death's cruel stroke prevent. The camp was won, and all in blood doth steep. The blood in rivers streamed from tent to tent. It soiled, defiled, defaced all the prey, shields, helmets, armors, plumes, and feathers gay. Thus conquered Godfrey, and as yet the sun dived not in silver waves his golden wane, but daylight served him to the fortress won with his victorious host to turn again. His bloody coat he put not off, but run to the high temple with his noble train, and there hung up his arms, and there he bows his knees, there prayed, and there performed his vows.
End of Jerusalem Delivered by Torquato Tasso, translated by Edward Fairfax.